Hey everyone, if you're enjoying my RM audiobooks, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that hype, and maybe check out my Patreon if you want to support the channel even more. Your support means a lot and helps me keep these coming. Now, sit back and enjoy the story.
Fate help. My sister is Heracles. Author note. This is a rewritten version of my old story. While this is not going to be at Tsukihime remake level of script change in the first few chapters, there will be major changes later on, mainly from chapter 6. Reverse Type Moon lore. Heracles and Iphicles are brother and sister in Nasaverse, believe it or not. So, apparently, I decided to do the most sensible thing possible. To take my own personal twist into that boiling pot of potential angst. Well, to be honest, I just wanted an OP Amazoness-like beauty with overprotective big sister tendencies. Hey, don't judge me, I know you cultured gentlemen out there love Scathach. Anyways, here we go. Chapter 1 Prologue. Snake Alarm. Hello there, good gentlemen of culture. Have you heard of the glory of Hera, by any chance? Yes, the demigod of Zeus who conquered the 12 labors as atonement for his gruesome crimes. And by gruesome crimes, I mean familicide. You know, the good old killing your most loved ones by brutal strength kind of redemption trope. To elaborate, he murdered his family by burning them alive in hardcore Gene Dark style. His own children, wife, and nephews. All burnt to ashes by his hands in a fit of rage and madness. A madness that was induced by Hera. The well-used, tragic hero type of MC if you ask me. Anyway, you might wonder why I'm rambling about the most famous hero in Greek mythology, though trust me, I have good reason to. You see, I'm named after someone very close to Heracles, both in blood and spirit. Iphicles. Yes, that's my name. I heard my dad call me by that name. Never ever heard of it? I'm not surprised. After all, the Iphicles in canon Greek mythology didn't have any accomplishments worthy of legend. Spoiler, I was named after the half-brother of Heracles. Oh, and I'm currently a newborn baby. Yes, I know. Cliché baby reincarnation from the trashy-brain-dead ice guy godlike Japanese MC novels. Well, the thing you don't know is that a baby is soft, tender, and full of delicacies. No, I'm not talking from my perspective. That'll be downright creepy, even for a Japanese hentai-influenced dude. I'm talking from my dear visitor's perspective. Aeneas. You see, I'm half a foot away from death, quite literally speaking. Why? First, let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen an anaconda in your life? Those gigantic river snakes that dwell in the Amazon rainforests? Try imagining them twice as thick and 3 times as long. Then, paint them black. Metallic black. Now you have it. A serpent with black scales that reflects the moonlight, venomous fangs as large as an adult's hand, and glowing yellow eyes. That was what I saw coiled beside my crib. You cannot possibly imagine the utter panic I felt when I came face to face with that giant snake staring at me like I'm a very juicy piece of ham dangling in front of his face. Well, newsflash. He's not mistaken. I'm proud that I didn't die from cardiac arrest on the spot. I would have given myself a medal and a little victory dance if he wasn't eyeing me with all the hunger in the damn world. Aeneas. On second thought, cardiac arrest sounded better. It would have been more merciful than being gobbled up alive, at the very least. God knows how bad his acid breath might stink. Aeneas. Or was it a she-snake? Did my internal comment somehow make him, her, it, angry? Yes, I'm still terrified beyond my mind if you still can't tell. Trash talking can only alleviate the panic so much. Oh, I'm so fucking dead. Okay, last second resort. Diplomacy. Or in other words, bullshitting. Didua, bulua luapa. Oh, okay. Stop. I taste like rotten apples. Aeneas. Right. Yeah. I'm not even capable of coherent speech. What did you expect from a damn toddler? And I think I failed in discouraging it. Curse my underdeveloped excuse of a mouth. Thanks to it, I'm about to get swallowed. Damn, I didn't know its jaws can actually open that wide. Blood blada. Fahagu. Oh my god, your breath is horrendous. Brush your teeth. Aeneas. Welp, I did what I could. Just my rotten luck. My killer doesn't even have basic hygiene. Double rotten luck. Heh. On the very first day of my life, I find myself in some ancient unknown place, presumably Greek from the architecture, inside the frail body of a baby inside a wooden crib, about to be swallowed by some genetically mutated freak, aka big-ass snake. My short life flashed before my eyes. There wasn't any. I was only self-conscious for a damn minute. Ah, come to think of it, I didn't even get the time to explore my second life. Well, I think it is my second life. I couldn't remember anything about my past if I was lucky enough to have lived through one, that is. I somehow doubted that, considering my current situation. With some fractured knowledge from the 21st century still intact in my tiny brain, I deduced that this phenomenon could only be explained as reincarnation. Looks like Christianity isn't so strong in this part of the world. The priest would have a stroke. Heresy and all that nonsense to their holy Bible. And I'm monologuing to nobody when I'm about to get digested into baby mincemeat. Great. MNGH. Wait, what was that? Did I just hear something suspiciously similar to a baby? Come to think of it, this crib does seem awfully cozy, cramped, and warm with this pillow. Da fa. Ah, fuck. I can't believe I didn't notice until now. Like, seriously? Who mistakes a baby for a pillow? A man inside a baby, of course. Ha 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 ha. I really should have my IQ checked. Or my orbital nerves. Or both. Come to think of it, am I mentally impaired? Am I crazy? Is this whole situation nothing but an illusion in my mind? I touched the baby's neck. I felt a faint pulse under my thumb, and the sensation of air going in and out of her lungs. She was alive. So very much alive. Ah, damn it. Damn it all. Slowly, deliberately, I moved in front of my drooling companion. Without memories I'll be damned if I let another innocent baby die in my place, under my watch. Never. The right course of action may have been to cry out, wail, and do everything to gather an adult's attention. However, I had a gut feeling that as soon as I do that, the snake would have lunged forward and gobbled me up entirely, along with the baby. No, I cannot allow that. NH. Oh, shit. Seems like Sleeping Beauty is now awake. I saw my sister, don't ask me why, I just knew it, rub her adorable cheeks with her small fists and open her vibrant golden eyes. Please don't make any noise. Please don't make any noise. Please. No sound. Okay. I channeled all my inner charismatic energy into my eyes and pleaded with her via eye contact. She smiled. She had dimples when she smiled. So cute. Focus. I channeled even more energy into my eyes. If this was an SF film, I would have moved the universe with my sheer mental force alone. No sound, no sound, no sound, no sound, no sound, no sound. My sister giggled. Apparently, my communication skills suck balls. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The sound was threatening enough to make an adult shit his pants. It triggered the instinctual fear in my gut, making me want to puke. That hiss was definitely much more ominous than before. Before, it was something along the lines of, hey, this puny human looks like a tasty snack. Now, it was giving off, I found you, infidel. Leave thy head where it belongs. Kind of vibes. Its yellow eyes gleamed with malice as it reared its ugly head. My sister giggled again. I whimpered. Then, without warning, it lunged. From then on, it was pure ultra instinct. I danced around with the grace of a drunken butterfly and stung with the ferocity of an anorexic bee. Which meant, while glamorously pissing myself, I somehow managed to punch the snake in the eye with the force of a flying plushie. The snake was not pleased by my less than satisfactory performance. In the blink of an eye, I found myself strangled by the scaly beast. It wrapped around my body, crushing my lungs and suffocating me. I struggled and thrashed, but it was hopeless. The air was squeezed out of my lungs, and I could feel my vision darken. Run. My adorable sister looked back at me with wide eyes. Tears started to fill them. She sniffled and held out her arms. Oh, how much I wanted to give her a hug and assure her that everything would be fine. Yes, I should have known. Babies can't plan an escape. Most of all, they can't run. Besides, she must be horrified, that poor little. KHK. The serpent let out a choking sound. Strange. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one here who's getting strangled. What on earth, Dash? My jaw fell wide open. Something like a cross between a gasp and a squeal left my throat. Before my eyes, I saw a furious baby girl stand up on her tiny legs, crushing the neck of the giant snake with her bare hands. She let out a cute growl as she continued choking the air out of the serpent, without mercy, without hesitation. The snake tried to strangle her by constricting the girl with its body, and when that seemed to have no effect, it tried to escape by slithering out of her grasp. It couldn't. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, although it must have been no more than a few seconds in relative time dash, there was a loud, sickening crack. My baby sister opened her tiny palms. The serpent wavered in the air, and for one terrible second, I thought it might be still alive until I saw the undeniable marks of my sister's handwork on its neck. Its metal scales were splintered and cracked in a million cobweb-like fissures, while its muscles were compressed to the point it became a solid, dark red rock. Its lifeless eyes grotesquely bulged out of their sockets from the immense pressure applied to its blood flow, and from its corners, red blood spurted out like a small fountain. With a heavy thud, the dead body of the serpent crashed onto the stone floor, its crimson blood soaking into the ground beneath. However, my sister seemed that she couldn't care less about her incredible feat, for she quickly scurried toward me as fast as her wobbly little legs could carry her. With tears in her eyes, she touched my cheek with her tiny hand. Heh. Atta girl, incredible work there. I conveyed with a weak smile. I coughed. My tongue tasted something awfully like raw iron. Oops, I was coughing blood. My sister started crying. My communication skills really suck. Alcides, Iphicles, what happened? What in the actual Hades is that dead monster doing inside here? A man dressed in golden ornaments and regal blue robes stormed into the room, only to be shocked by the mangled monster lying inside its own pool of steaming blood. Wait a second. Why in Hera's name is my sister named Alcides? No, it can't be, unless… I glanced back at the dead serpent on the floor, then at my sniveling sister who was clinging on to me as a starving koala does to a eucalyptus tree. Nah, it can't be, right? Haha. I fucking hate my life. Author note. And that's the first day in Iphicles' life. Quite a wild ride. How did you like this rewritten version? Review if you find this interesting. It helps me a lot. Or just review again. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 2, Bounded by Fate. Author note. First things first, do you have basic knowledge of so far from Fate? Did you Google it? Just asking. And yes, I added new episodes in this chapter, Alcides POV extension part, and edited others. It's not a copy-paste. Second update of the day. Oh, in this world, female Herc looks like a tan Diana from DC Comics, by the way. Hot. Iphicles? Show to Heracles. Please review to let me know your thoughts, etc. Anyways, without further ado, here we go. Chapter 2, Bounded by Fate. 3 years have passed since that fateful night. Me, being the naturally talented and charming young boy I am, was foregoing my worthless princely duties, namely, appeasing powerful nobles, other aristocrats, etc., and perfecting my stealth/strategic tactics by an ancient training method called hide and seek. So powerful was that method that it was banished from my proper daily routine, and I was forbidden to ever partake in that technique again. However, that didn't stop me. Yes, indeed. You guessed it right. I incorporated hide and seek into part of my new and improvised runaway from my princely duties daily routine. I partake in the hiding part, by the way. Wait, you might say, isn't that the same as utilizing hide and seek in everyday life? How would that be a solution to your problems, you might ask? My answer to your doubts is yes. Not no, not yes, but yes. In other words, I didn't give a flying F***ck. As you can already guess, the mighty king of Mycenae was not very pleased. As a matter of fact, he was absolutely livid. An order was issued that very day, and the order has stayed ever since. To eloquently quote, find those king be cheese and shove your damn fists up their s so hard that they'll be spitting out all of those profanities from their tainted souls, quote end. I think I might have made him more prone to high blood pressure. In retrospect, I really shouldn't have made a joke about his receding hairline in the midst of a royal meeting. Well, what was done is done. I needed only to adapt. Every day, I managed to sneak out, and every day they send out more men to catch me. What was at first 3 men increased their numbers until they became a whole squadron. Before I knew it, my hide and seek became a sort of unofficial welcoming ceremony for newbie soldiers as the older veterans learned to lie back, relax, and enjoy the shit show that was unfolding before their eyes. As some may have already guessed, the mighty king of Mycenae was not very pleased. As a matter of fact, he was frothing at the mouth so hard that his hair fell out from his receding hairline. On second thought, I really shouldn't have stolen his wig when he was having a passionate speech about patriotism in front of his men. Naturally, my catchers, or in this case, my seekers were replaced by men appointed by the king. Thus, a new level of the game was unlocked. The seekers are Mycenae's best warriors. And they suck. To be honest, they weren't bad per SEI. We were just more experienced, nimble, and a hell lot more agile. Yes, the hiders were me and my lovely sister, Alcides. She kinda tagged along claiming that big sis must protect brother, though I'm pretty sure her motives were extremely similar to mine. We both hated kingship with passion. Min. See? Big sister is strong. I can carry Iphicles around. We can do this all day. Together. My sister held on to my legs for balance as I sat on her shoulders like a rider steering his horse. In all honesty, Alcides ran faster than most horses, putting all the war horses in our father's stables to shame. She beamed up at me with her megawatt smile, devoid of negativity. I smiled back and caressed her hair lovingly. Yes, dear sister. What would I do without you? She preened and leaned into my hand. I patted her head more. Well, at least part of our motives for ditching our classes were the same. Although her feelings of fierce familial love towards me were mutual, I kind of worry how close and how frequent we stuck together. All the time, that is. We eat together, play together, study together, bathe together, train together, sleep together. Wait, that came out very wrong. Ahem. Hornybach. What I am trying to imply was that we basically act as one, two halves of the same entity, in a sense. Part of it was my fault, I suppose. I pampered my sister. Seriously treated her with all the love and respect a sibling could offer. In my defense, my action should be justified because my sister, well, she's lonely without my presence. No, I'm not being narcissistic. Literally, without me, her isolated world would have become one filled with fear, silence, and false smiles. You see, since the night my sister saved my life by strangling a monstrous serpent with her bare hands, everything changed. Alcides was born different. Fundamentally different. When normal babies cry when they are hungry, scared, or lonely, she didn't. Demigods mature much faster than most mortals, and it was the same for Alcides. She was already attached to her half-brother at birth, by a bond only few could share. Within her still immature mind, she instinctively knew that Iphicles was her family, and she knew that he needed her protection. It may have had something to do with the way they were produced inside the same womb, or it may have been the way he was born without divinity. Whatever reason, from the second Iphicles stood up against the serpent even though it spelled out his own doom, all just to protect her, Alcides felt something click inside her mind. An emotion only a mother feels towards her child. Raw protective maternal instinct and volcanic fury that befalls anything that dare harms one of her own. A simple squeeze was all she needed. With a pop, the snake's neck broke apart. Her first kill was disturbingly easy like that. What followed after, however, was agonizing. Their father, or in her case her stepfather Amphitryon, deduced that she was Zeus's bastard from the blood on her hands, and immediately took her away from her brother. As one could guess, as soon as she realized she was isolated from her half-twin, she went into a panic-induced frenzy. Ripping off the bars of her new iron crib, Alcides ran on the second night she was born, storming through the dead of night, and eventually finding her way back to her worried brother by knocking down every single door. The next day, Amphitryon found the twins sleeping in each other's arms with a peaceful smile on their faces. That incident became the last time Alcides was forced into something she didn't want. The lesson the king learned that day was, demigods induce headaches. In the next few years, Alcides came to experience a lot of her unique situation in Mycenae. Oh, how she came to thank fate for blessing her with a lovely brother. Without Iphicles, God knows what sort of woman she would have grown into. Because she was different, she was alienized in her own palace. Because she was so strong, none dared to even look her in the eye. Even her stepfather Amphitryon was wary of her and kept her at more than an arm's distance at all times. Speaking of Amphitryon, contrary to what one might think, despite his mixed feelings toward his daughter, he gave her the very best his kingdom has got to offer. While he had no affection whatsoever towards her, he made sure that the daughter of Zeus was treated like one of his own. Be it his duty as a king, or his fear of the wrath of Zeus, he dared not mistreat her in any way. Surprisingly, her mother was the one who did not grant her daughter the same respect. For Queen Alcmene, Alcides was the proof of her own unfaithfulness, a disgusting reminder of Zeus's trickery, and the very reason her husband refused to bed her again. Without love, neither affection from her parents, and Zeus being, well, literally above the clouds, and just being Zeus, a colossal dick in more ways than one dash, there was no one but Iphicles who stayed by her side when she needed it most. Just like that fated day. Alcides would never forget the one time she sneaked out of her stifling palace, all alone, and in disguise. She wanted to explore the streets, alone. She wanted to prove that she could also be like her beloved brother, a normal child. At first, all seemed to go well. She sneaked out without anyone noticing her presence and traveled down the world and into the commoner district. Finding a small group of boys playing by the roadside, she ran into their midst, eager to join whatever they were doing. However, being the stupid brats all boys were, they made fun of her and challenged her to a grappling contest, while mocking how a girl dared to enter their manly activities. Alcides, easily riled by their taunts, sent them flying into the mud by grabbing them by the neck and throwing them with pure strength. One of them started to cry, while another took an excrement-filled bucket for the fields and dumped it over her hair. The hair that Iphicles loved. The hair he cherished by helping her comb out its curls every single morning. The rage which followed was deadly. The stones cracked under her feet as she slowly turned around. The foolish boy who tainted her hair fell to the ground with a scream, terrified by the sheer ire her eyes contained. Her fist raised up, high in the sky. Every child there instinctively knew that when her fist so much as scratched them, their heads would be sent flying. Literally. The child on the ground trembled, no longer able to plead, no longer able to move a single finger, paralyzed by the vision of his gruesome demise. And the vision would have become a reality, if not for one Iphicles who had trailed after his sister, afraid that she might get bullied. Alcides drew back her fist, ready to end the pathetic piece of shit before her when suddenly, a familiar figure stepped in front of the child. Her fist stopped a mere inch before she could snap the spinal cord of her dear brother. Even then, the initial impact alone was enough to send him spiraling into the ground. He bounced a few times, slid, and hit the wall at the end of the alleyway. The boys snapped out of their trance-like state and ran off to their mothers, screaming in fear. Alcides just stood there, shell-shocked and unable to process what she had done. How? No. How could she? No. She ran to her brother who was coughing up blood and knelt beside him. She reached out to grasp him, only to hesitate when she saw what she had done. Did she even have the right to touch him after the sin she committed? Her chaotic thoughts swirled in her mind. She didn't know what to do. A warm pair of hands enveloped her trembling fists. She looked up. Iphicles winked at her, without an ounce of fear or anger like the boys had shown. Good punch you have there, Alcides. Oh my, that'll take an entire week to heal. Iphicles. I am, she stuttered. A finger pressed against her quivering lips. I know, Alcides, I know. Promise me one thing, though. Alcides tensed. She nodded curtly, ready to receive any order her brother deemed worthy. Iphicles chuckled. Promise me that you would not use violence to resolve your anger. Alcides' head snapped up. But she started to complain. Iphicles shook his head. Yes, they did something very disrespectful. However, you nearly killed one of them in revenge. Have I not stepped in? His brains would be splattered across the ground by now. Is that your version of honor and justice? Alcides hung her head, ashamed. Iphicles gently caught her chin and tilted her head upwards so that she faced him. Besides, you were stunning no matter what. Alcides pouted. You were lying. Iphicles grinned challengingly. Am I? He simply asked back. He stood up on a shaking pair of legs and walked over to the overturned bucket of excrement. He reached down and raised it above his head. Alcides' eyes widened. No, he couldn't possibly be thinking about. Iphicles dumped the excrement onto his head. He turned around with a grimace. Ain't I Prince Charming? He said with an exaggerated noble-like haughtiness. He struck a pose and coughed from the foul smell. Something warm lit up in Alcides' chest. Something that she shall never forget. They stared at each other for a few moments and burst out laughing. This shit stinks, was Alcides' eloquent reply. Iphicles nodded in agreement. The following swim in the nearby river was the most fun Alcides had in months. That day, that instant, Iphicles had stoked an unextinguishable flame in her chest. What was first a small spark turned into a small bonfire which emitted warmth, then rapidly escalated into a raging inferno. Iphicles, oh Iphicles, her most beloved brother. Shunned she may be, with Iphicles by her side, she learned compassion, patience, and forgiveness. Compassion for the people who are weaker both in mind and body. Patience for the years needed for the people to learn of her nature. Forgiveness for their inherent weakness that fears the unknown. From her younger brother, she learned more than she could ever possibly have from their parents, and her brother received more familial love than he could ever possibly have. Thus, on that sunny day, she made him swear a pinky promise beside the river where they swam. Instead, her brother proposed something more. Even though its significance was yet to dawn upon her until much, much later, she happily complied. Thou art I art thou. Till eternal death shall us part. Thus, an ancient oath was made upon the river Styx. Their fates forever intertwined. Apparently, Iphicles had a flair for theatrics. Present day. The world soared by as my sister ran across the roofs with me on her shoulders. It was exhilarating. Together, we can topple the world. It was a whisper, not meant to be heard. To my surprise, there was an answer though. Yes, we are the world. Momentarily stunned, I blinked a few times. Then, mirth bubbled up from within me, engulfing me whole. I laughed out loud for the world to hear, with my sister joining me soon after. It was a brilliant day. Author note. How was the rewrite? Review to praise Iphicles 1 each on. Review again for the idiotic awesomeness of Iphicles. Till next time, unless lab work kills me. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 3, Bootlicking Olympian Style. In a meadow where flowers bloom all year, in a place beyond time, where a master is lecturing his young pupil. Say, Arturia, what do you think about fame? Yes, fame. Yes, being famous would lead to potential supporters as well as conflict. Well done. Being one of the supporting factors of kingship, fame is a difficult miracle to control. It flows with the time as it flows with the emotions, aspirations, and hopes of the people, sucking more and more into its vortex as it grows. Ah, good question. I use the word miracle on purpose. You see, fame is much more than just a direction in social communities. Fame, when abundant and in great amounts, can take on an influential power only the collective unconscious is able to wield. In other words, fame is oftentimes the equivalent of faith and belief. It could be said that from fame, belief sprouts, and from belief, faith stems. And from faith, the power of the divine spreads. Yes, faith was one of the decisive factors in a divine entity's strength, no matter the culture or the age. Faith is power. What? Huh? You want to hear more stories about your ancestor? Well, this lecture is about something your idol did. You see, he was one of the very few who utilized the balance, the connection between faith and the divine. After all, he was the one who made the queen change. At dawn, a small hooded boy at the age of 7 could be seen in the royal palace garden dimly lit by flickering torches whose flames danced in the dark. Around his wavering shadows cast by the numerous torchlights, there were 13 statues positioned in a way so that they surrounded the boy in a large circle, with a single statue in the center where the boy knelt at its feet. The statues were all made of hardened clay, supposedly made by hand from the multiple rough edges and bumps it supports around its entire structure, with each a slab of rock with something etched onto it, planted into the ground near their feet. While it was definitely not a masterpiece of some renowned sculptor, each statue was unique and had some kind of emotion, or one might say, a sort of idea, encompassed in it. The statues the boy made were none other, the 12 Olympians, and the 2 who had no throne. Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, Hephaestus, Ares, Athena, Hermes, Apollo, Artemis, Aphrodite, Demeter, Dionysus, Hades, and Hestia. Kowtowing once, twice, and 3 times, the boy lowered his head so low that it practically dug into the ground before the statue's feet. The boy stayed in that position for a few minutes, then stood up and produced a silver stick with peacock feathers attached on its end from his robes. Slowly, with a serene and solemn air only a few could replicate, the boy started to dance. What was the most ancient form of prayer and devotion to the divine? Was it kneeling? Was it carving sculptures? Was it chanting some esoteric charms? No. The answer is dancing. Even before the age where Prometheus brought the first flame upon mankind, the feeble and foolish humans prayed to the great forces above in the sky which threw lighting and spread fires. They danced and cried to the heavens, begging for the mercy of rainfall. What the boy was doing was exactly that. He was using the most ancient form of prayer he knew from the shards of knowledge he carried from the unknown. Unknowingly, what he did was far more beneficial than the orthodox and conventional prayers of the priest and oracles. His was the form of dance praying called kagura in modern Japan. The roots are as ancient as they could be, as it was a form of dance used to lure out the sun goddess Amaterasu from her cave when she went into hiding and shrouded the lands in a never-ending night. This was the dance devoted to the goddess to ease her pains, a dance created for the sole purpose of entertaining and luring out the divine. In a way, his dancing contained far more mystical weight and importance than mere sacrifices. The kagura was at one point a form of ritual for the evocation of divine spirits. There was no way it didn't hold more glamour in the god's eyes than plain prayer and offerings, since it was a method to charm and appeal to the divine to its very roots. It was, simply, exotic to the extreme, especially for a sun god who was also a god of art. Coincidentally, a Greek sun god with similar taste and origins to Amaterasu. It was little wonder the kagura had so much effect. With one last spin and slash of his stick, the boy concluded his dance and let out a long, deep breath. He looked up, just to see the rising sun pierce his eyes, its golden light warming his slightly chilled body. The boy smiled and said a quiet thank you to two certain sun gods, Helios and Apollo. The sun ray took two slightly different tones, one red, one yellow, as if the sunlight was differentiating itself. He knew their quirks by now. The red hue was Helios, and the golden glow was Apollo. He just knew. The boy smiled. He had long since gotten used to the sun god's antics in the past 2 years, from the day he first started praying. He let out a small grunt as he pulled his bronze sword and short spear, a present gifted to him on his 7th birthday, while Alcides got an iron club from the nearby ground. His smile widening when he realized the weapons in his hands felt scorching hot yet at the same time very comfortable, like a piece of heated metal gloves that a warrior had worn to countless battles. Ares and Hephaestus. Unknowing to the other Greeks in his land, the war god and the smithing god were on surprisingly good terms, at least from what he felt from the times they subtly interacted with his surroundings, such as right now. Well, as long as you call the friendly rivalry vying for a small boy's attention good terms, but he digresses. Rivalry was also a form of friendship, after all. Maybe because they both dislike their parents, or maybe Hephaestus doesn't care much for his wife and is super chill. He really didn't want to think NTR was a hot thing in Greek god society. Well, it is a society where gods fuck bulls and ducks and goats. Nope, he was too young to go down that rabbit hole of debauchery. Like, a millennium too young. The boy yawned. He woke before the crack of dawn, so he was still very sleepy. Suddenly he felt a surge of potent energy shoot through his veins as if his brain suddenly decided to go high on glucose and adrenaline. Maybe Athena? Demeter? Most likely both. He uncorked his sheepskin bottle and let the wine trickle down his dehydrated throat. Of course, the drinking age policy was not a thing in the age of gods. After all, getting cursed for something really insignificant is a Tuesday in these god-infested lands, and even suggesting something such as protecting minors against the lethal effects of acute alcohol poisoning might result in getting turned into dolphins. Dolphins. Not fun at all. Heh. Hee. Maybe a little? Wait, was he actually on the Dionysus route? Ha 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 ha. Ugh, I wouldn't be surprised if wine enhances madness or something. Both rhetorically and mystically speaking, he thought, after forcefully clamping down on his sudden outburst of mirth. The boy shook his head with a small chuckle. Recently, he somehow started to have bursts of endorphin whenever he drank wine. He highly suspected it was the gift of one certain god of insanity, aka orgy parties. Well, at least he no longer felt fatigued, no matter how hard his schedule was, which usually consists of learning from groups of tutors and running away from them. His daily escape from princely duties routine was most definitely still active. He squinted his eyes. The sun was already creeping upwards from the horizon, which resulted in his hawk vision giving him a blaring headache. He quickly willed it off. It was another small gift he received probably from a certain moon goddess and sun god twin duo, though the boy has yet to find any use of it except as a built-in telescope with night vision. Well, to be completely honest, it was actually pretty useful in hide-and-seek and sightseeing. He had a strange feeling that was exactly the moon goddess's intention. Bear watching and all that. He just knew. The boy's ears twitched. He felt the crackle of burning wood and the warmth it produced. The hearth. His stomach growled. It was early breakfast time. In other words, time to show his other gifts in action. He had a hungry sister waiting for him. Hello there, Iphicles here, back from his early morning routine of kowtowing the fuck out of those attention-whoring gods. As always, I thank them for a bunch of things, ranging from my country's welfare to the health of my pet weasel, Galanthus. Oh yes, I have a pet now. To those educated Greek myth nerds out there, congrats. Yes, this is the turned form of none other than the servant of my mom Alcmene. At least, that was my most feasible hypothesis. I mean, I never met a weasel with an IQ that rivals a human. In the original myth, when Alcmene was in labor, she was having difficulty giving birth to twins, one of them a pure demigod. After 7 days, she called for assistance from Iphicles, the goddess of childbirth. However, due to Hera's plans of interfering so that the labor can kill the baby in the womb, she wasn't so keen to help. So, Galanthus tricked the goddess by lying that the baby has already been born and shocking her, and making her loosen her grip on the labor. Of course, there was no happy ending for her, or anyone in general who tricks the petty gods. As a punishment, Galanthus was turned into a weasel. Yeah, a weasel. A goddamn weasel. Apparently, for the higher-ups, turning people into dolphins or weasels were pretty funny. Good old Galanthus continued to look out for Alcides even after her transformation, and that was when I found her creeping out of our crib. I pretended to talk to her, convince her to stay in my childly way. The plan? Leave or I'll cry like a fucking bitch. Yeah, kneel before the power of pussy. Wait. No. That came out very wrong. Horny bok. Anyways. The result? Galanthus stayed longer. It didn't take much to convince her once Alcides woke up and grabbed her by the tail. It did take several years of begging, bribing, and coaxing to make her stay as my pet, though. She was kind of paranoid about accidentally meeting Hera. I couldn't agree more. We're straying off topic. Food first. Breakfast it is. The statues? Oh, I had finished those crude statues on my 5th birthday as a surprise for my high blood pressured father, and from that moment, everything escalated rather quickly. My father, King Amphitryon, was overjoyed. No, he was elated. More so than a heavy junkie on drugs. He was positively high. So high he would have hit a cloud. His reasons? Not exactly because he was pious or anything. We have priests and oracles for a reason, go figure, but because of the benefits that the statues brought. I myself seriously didn't know why the gods were so pleased. Maybe I am the first kid who did something like that? Or was it my happy dance set? Who am I kidding? Of course, I knew exactly what I was doing. All according to Kikaku. Yes. You see, I'm the grandson of Perseus, one of the most beloved demigods of all time. Alcides too. So, naturally, we were in the spotlight. In other words, inside the radar zone of the gossip-loving gods. We were right in the middle. What followed was quite simple. I acted uniquely. Entertained them, pleased them, licked their golden asses, everything. Then, they might start feeling generous enough. Generous enough to throw you some small gifts in the form of divine blessings, like how a rich fat guy throws bones to his skinny dog. Yum yum. I'm not even being sarcastic. They can give me divine shit for all I care, and I'll still take it and use it as face cream. I'll need everything to survive in this bizarre world. What? Go spout the injustice of the gods like a boss? Real life isn't a trashy god-killer edgelord light novel, you know? I would get my ass, my sister's ass, and the ass of Mycenae whipped. Thoroughly. In Greek terms? That meant eternal punishment. By the way, ever seen that extremely famous meme of a gentleman sprinkling salt while posing in a very stylish way? Well, beat that. I sprinkle magic salt from my 3 fingers like a fucking pro. Basically, I am a chef's wet dream on legs. That's what I was doing with Poseidon's gift. Sprinkling the oh-so-divine salt into my family's breakfast. And, you know what? It sparkles. Who the fuck needs sparkling salt? I do, apparently. Hey, it's taking it or leaving it. I'm not leaving anything. Besides, salt was very expensive in ancient times, like right now. Romans used salt as salary, you know? It's the origin of salary. Oh, embers of Olympus. Opening my palm upwards, I softly blew on it. Blinking embers flew from my hand like tiny grains of sand and lit up the damp logs in the fireplace. I willed the fire to glow warmly by basking the entire dining hall in orange light. My royal parents love the spectacle. Yes, that's Hestia's gift. Perhaps the second most useful one so far. Cool. Get the silver tableware ready, and we're ready to go. Normally, this kind of work would be done by servants, but since my gifts, they kind of turned into mine. I'm not complaining. It's good practice. I stuck my finger into the stew and licked it like a Chad. Yum. Creamy. Just how I like it. Bad manners? Hey, did I ever mention I can now sense poison and nullify it via physical touch? Uncle Hades definitely knows what a prince needs most. Why the hell does everything I say sound like some sexual innuendo? Fuck you. Galanthus let out her weasel sigh while perched on my shoulder and gently pawed my cheek. Wait, how did you get up there? I didn't even see her come in. As a matter of fact, I don't even know where she is nowadays. She just comes and goes. Come to think of it, why does Galanthus look like as if a fox and rabbit had an affair and then their love child mutated into a weasel? I mean, I'm no expert on weasels, but I'm pretty sure they aren't so angelic. They certainly don't have this marvelously soft fur as white as snow. Anyway, time for stew. Hera scowled. She couldn't figure out the enigma that is Iphicles. From what she'd seen, he was an idiot, but he was not foolish. No, he was far wiser, far more likable than any other demigod she'd seen till now. As a matter of fact, he prays more to her than her own priests, and that's putting it mildly. He praises her, sacrifices his best food to her with a zeal like no other, and made a dance devoted to her. He even got peacock feathers for his ceremonial tool, the symbol of her royalty. How did she know that his dance was for her? His godforsaken prayers echo inside her head. Every damn time. Frankly, it's weirding her out. Feared, hated, she could understand. However, loved, she could not comprehend. Loved, even after she nearly killed him at his birth, just because he cared for his half-twin sister? And was that genuine respect? What kind of mockery is this? Hera rose from her throne. It was time for her to test that boy, face to face. Author note. Despite Iphicles' banter, he seriously respects the gods. Even Hera. No, especially Hera. A lot of stories are forgotten by most, one of them being the tragic story of Hera. Now, time for the reviews. Review for the gods. For my poor mental health. For Iphicles too. Where is paranoid Thunderdix present, you say? He's not that generous. Review to appease him. And let me know your thoughts on this rewrite. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 4, Paradise Lost. Author note. This was an exhausting chapter to rewrite. Rejoice, this chapter might answer some of your questions, or not. Basic Greek Gnaesiverse lore ahead. This chapter might be confusing to some, though it'll make sense soon enough later on. Added Gnaesiverse lore for beginners at the end for confused beginners. Phew. Chapter 4, Paradise Lost. A dream in the endlessly vacant universe, long, long ago. One of a remnant of what was once a god. I was in an ancient nightmare. Inside a shard of a recording, long lost. Yes, I was reliving the nightmare. Tracing the footsteps of a broken past. Like a sleepwalker trapped in the void of a feverish dream. The why and how flew out of the window once I realized I was floating in the cosmos. In the midst of the vast pitch-black nothingness, I felt so tiny. I saw a group of migrants. A caravan of lost souls, wandering with little hope. I was one of them. I saw through one of their eyes. I was in one of their bodies, and I had their thoughts, their very memories. I realized that I was a piece of them. I was, in some bizarre way, carrying a part of them. An inheritance. I am a titan. Shaking my head, I banished the fleeting thoughts. I hurried to their side, afraid that they might leave me behind in an eternal dream. As I got closer, I noticed that they weren't bioorganic. The migrants were giant machines. Memories flooded my mind. They were the last remnants of a long-lost alien civilization, in their last-ditch effort of inheriting their will unto the worlds beyond. We were essentially a Noah's Ark that took the form of a deus ex machina, a mechanical civilization-preserving ship. Ironically, the life forms that the machine gods supported aboard our ships withered away in the flow of time that almost lasted an eternity, leaving nothing behind but an empty, meaningless husk of an order. A supreme proposition meant to be followed as their creators will. Find another habitable planet. Rebuild our race. Revive our mother planet. Left with no masters, no place to be called home, the robots wandered onwards, endlessly, without rest. And I wandered with them. I felt their despair. I felt the way their emotions withered and decayed, and how terribly, terribly long their journey was. A long, long, long time passed in the endless nightmare. Over an eternity, their numbers dwindled. One by one, the gigantic robot ships started either malfunctioning or ceased to operate altogether. I saw how one by one, the great machines chose the peaceful path of self-destruction. Oh, how long it was. By the time their numbers decreased until it was no more than 30, I had practically lost my own sense of time. At last, when hope seemed all but lost, the machines found a planet. I found my home. Oh, the elation. The pure bliss. The ecstasy of accomplishment. The machines had, at last, found their Eden. I have reached where I belonged. A habitable planet, their creators had yearned for. A planet they had been programmed to discover. A planet brimming with young life, yet facing terrible danger. A danger that may have well ended all life upon that planet. And we didn't know it. We spent our days debating over how to use the prehistoric natives on the planet, the so-called man-apes. With our help, the man-apes created a civilization. Obsolete it may be compared to our mother planet, it was at least 20,000 years more advanced than their time. Soon enough, with stability, came conflict. Even among ourselves. Half of us insisted that we must brainwash the man-apes as slaves and control their free will. The other half of us preached that the man-apes are not mindless animals, and under their guidance, they would learn to rein in their primal instincts and live in prosperity as a harmonious community. We argued over the futility of helping them, while we ourselves must leave this planet to rebuild our civilization, such as our creator's final will. Eventually, the heated arguments escalated into violent discussions, and finally into a dispute of lethal force. One of the capitals we built on the planet, Atlantis, was torn apart by our civil war. On one side stood the Olympians, as the natives called them, led by Jupiter. On the other stood the Titans, led by Saturn, or some called Kronos. I stood on this side. And thus, the great war which would be named the Titanomachia started. How foolish we were, spending our precious resources on such meaningless skirmishes. It was when the Titans were losing that it arrived. From the gluttonous machine unit, Harvester Starvelber, she came. I knew her name. Somehow, I just knew. The white Titan hath cometh to ring thy doom. Deployed from that planet-devouring artificial intelligence star hive, there was a ship named Velber-02, codenamed Safar. A humanoid battleship that specializes in the termination of all sapient life. The White Titan. The humongous Titan loomed over even the most gigantic of gods, and thus, humanity came to remember it as the White Titan of Tassalai in Ajur, the great god Safar. Monstrous, invincible, indestructible it was, devouring life without end being its sole meaning in existence, it raged through the lands, pillaging whatever came into its way. Lukosmachia. That was what the battle between us, the alien machine gods, and the White Titan was called. A grand battle between ones beyond humanity, beyond this solar system, beyond this universe. One to protect, one to destroy. And destroy she did. Safar destroyed most of mankind's earliest civilizations, the most famous of them being our first city, Atlantis. The battle raged on as the world shook. One by one, the machine gods lost their true forms, their bodies twisted and broken beyond repair. The Titan rejected all reason, all forces. It even rejected death itself. Not even the very embodiment of war, with its mighty sword, who was said to be the greatest enemy she had ever fought, was able to touch Safar. I fought too, alongside my kin, though I was also overpowered and ripped to pieces, shreds. I can see it, clear as day, as her fingers dug into my hide, prying them apart with childlike sadism, her mouth opening wide to prey on my core, to devour, destroy, and analyze what was once me. Digested, resolved, absorbed. I am Safar. Safar, Velber-02. Destroyer ship deployed from the Harvester Star. Destroyer of the stars. I am Safar. My mission. Profiling biodata through annihilation. I needed more. As Velber commands, Velber-02 must obey. The thrill of battle, the red machine god, Mars. He was memorable. I took his sword, his symbol, the photon ray. A grand battle. A duel well fought. Alas, Mars was too weak. I remember standing over the destroyed body of Mars. His sword in my hands as my trophy. Abruptly, there arose what the animals categorized as hope. Who could be so foolish to stand up in that hour of despair? My interest piqued. There it stood, a human too tiny to be considered a vermin. An insignificant life form. In the human's hands, there was but only a tiny sword, far smaller than what I claimed. Amusement. This was what it was. Emotion. Elation. Excitement. I wanted to cross swords with that tiny speck of dust. I wanted to crush it. One of the last remaining non-bioorganic giants, Jupiter tried to rise. Perhaps, in one last effort to preserve those lives he failed to protect, I crushed it. Hope and all. I felt arrogance. The human sword was an anomaly. A sword forged and refined in the depths of the earth. The ultimate phantasm, created by the stars and humanity's deepest wishes. The embodiment of world-saving hope. And I wanted to destroy it. I failed. Despite my body being tougher than any material on this small planet, strong enough to resist the heat of stars, my body was split in two by the holy sword. Its golden light, so strong and bright, it swallowed me whole. The pain, agony, rage, a desire for revenge. A white flash swallowed me. I tumbled and rolled through shards of memories and past millions of scenes frozen in time. The dreams were dissolving. A hand was pulling me up. A hero. My friend. I was pulled up to the surface, and I, at last, broke free. Millennials later, after the White Titan's demise, Jupiter left his old machine body and created a humanoid vessel, a terminal fit for collecting faith and attaining divinity. Jupiter became Zeus. Changed and downgraded he was, the god did not forget that golden light. The light of humanity. We need humanity, the power of humanity for the wars yet to come. A hero, a hybrid that shall fight back the terrors the dead body of Safar shall produce. The Gigas. Thus, the call for heroes has arisen. Gigantomachia was near. Zeus needed an army. A god wouldn't be enough. It needed the potential of a human. That was when he found his answer. A hybrid. A half-blood crossbreed between a god and a human. It was well within his power and ability to create such hybrids. There was no reason not to, and the other male gods agreed. With their blood, there shall be the blessing of divinity from the mystical side, and nanotechnology from their lingering residue. The hybrids, the demigods would turn into heroes, unlike no other. And they were right. If there was one single error Zeus, no, the Olympians made as a whole, it was that they did not comprehend how much their plans would affect Hera, former machine goddess and currently incorporated with an old earth goddess long forgotten. Hera, like all the other gods, was the embodiment of a natural force, a phenomenon, the crystallized manifestation of a concept. She was the mighty queen of gods, mistress of monsters. She was also the goddess of women, marriage, family, and childbirth, patroness and protectress of married women, presiding over weddings and blessing marital unions. That made her into what she was, defined her into what she shall be. Her jealous and vengeful nature against Zeus' numerous lovers and illegitimate offspring, One can say that itself was a result of how the married woman of ancient Greek acted. A god is like a mirror. It represents, and it reflects human nature. To go against her nature, or worse, getting disgraced by an equal in her domain and forgiving the transgression, was akin to tearing her own raison d'etre apart with her own hands. It just wasn't possible. Hera, oh, fair Hera, wronged again and again. Disgraced countless times, mocked by her own husband who so mindlessly treads through her own domain with no respect whatsoever. Or was it Zeus's plan all along? Hera once forced Zeus into subjugation with the other gods in a small coup, making him swear he shall act more, accordingly, and proper as the king of the gods. Zeus replied by dangling Hera off the cliff of Mount Olympus with a chain wrapped around her leg. Even with his might and intellect, he was still very much a colossal asshole. Hera was then forced to swear she shall no longer disobey Zeus, no matter what. No matter how many times he shall shame her by producing demigod hybrids for the upcoming war. Hatred and bitterness brew. Thus, Hera was bound in her own prison of contradiction, a hell made from her own unchangeable godly nature. Demigods were the embodiment of her defeat. The unmoving proof of his unfaithfulness and his unfilial acts. Disgusting. She endured. Disgusting. She endured. A bastard of Zeus, that stole my breast milk, meant only to feed my offspring and my domain? She endured, until she could no longer. This absolute insult to her entire existence she shall never forgive. Die. 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 The demigod lived. As if to insult her furthermore, the demigod survived because of the immense power she stole from her. In her haze of fury, she saw something different. Something so pure, so beautiful. A soul of a courageous hero in the budding, worthy of her attention. Hera, for the first time in many years, was intrigued. There will be plenty of opportunities later. First, I shall solve this mystery in front of me. She was not disappointed. Any other soul would have been traumatized, terrified of her mere existence. Iphicles was not. Thank you for your work as the goddess of marriage. Thank you for protecting all the independent women out there. Thank you for the happiness you bring to the families you protect. Thank you for your mercy in letting my sister live one more day. Thank you. Thank you. For all the time she spent on the face of this earth, she had never ever met someone so selfless, so full of respect for a supreme being most only beg and cower before. A wish for someone else. A wish for countless others, even for ones he has never met. An eternal hope for a brighter future. How can someone with a mentality such as him be born in this harsh and cruel, unforgiving world? No, he must be a fraud. His wishes, a facade. She refused to believe it. She couldn't. If he was true, then what would become of the disgusting humanity she embodied? What would become of her vengeance? No, she could not accept that. Hera arose from her throne. I shall personally attest to your true nature. Iphicles, grandson of Perseus. A cruel smile graced her lips. I do hope you do not disappoint me, for your own sake. She lifted her hand and pulled out a single strand of black hair, her green eyes trailing it as it fell through the clouds and down to the earth below. After all, false prayers are a crime that shall not go unpunished. I was falling through a dream, falling out of my nightmare. A voice was asking me. A familiar voice. What is honor? Is it the vague promise of glory and fame? A fairy tale fabricated in blank and white? The courage of a hero that knows no bounds. A voice of a hero of justice. A voice I both admire and hate. I must answer. Even in a dream. I opened my mouth. Searing pain made me open my eyes. My head throbbed like mad. Flashes of images, presumably echoes of my past life and something that was definitely not mine, bombarded me like heavy rain, only to be forgotten the second I tried to grasp them. Endless wandering, jubilance, arguments, war, death, destruction, a horrible, bright, scorching, warm, light. A hand. A red-haired man. No, a hair of bone white. A foolish dream. An immature ideal. A hypocrite with only remorse to call his own. What were the visions? Who was he? Why dash? Pain. Hitched breathing. Hyperventilation. Headache. Bad idea. Forget. Relax. Deep breaths. You got this. In. Out. Sucking in breaths. Letting them out. Slowly does it. Yes. Forget it. After what seemed like a few minutes, I finally managed to calm down. By then, the memories were all long gone. Strangely, I felt no urge to remember them. May probably was all nonsense in the first place. I looked around. Where am I? I was walking along the stream, having some precious alone time, all to myself. Well, obviously. It seemed I have taken a short nap and drifted off. Hey, typical me. I yawned, leaning my back against a black, scaly, metallic piece of wood. Wait. What? Aeneas. There, behind my back, was the head of a very pissed-off serpent. A serpent, twice the size of what once assaulted us in our crib. 16 meters long, maybe? I looked at the sparkling stream in front of me. It looked very inviting. I looked back at the wall of angry muscle and fangs behind me. It looked very terrifying. Aeneas. The hissing grew louder. I nodded sagely. Snake fetish? Hera it is, then. I concluded. I patted the scales. It cut open my palm. I licked my wound. Salty and full of iron. I was not hallucinating. That meant that fucking death machine behind me was not an illusion. I stood up. I bravely looked it in the eye. I felt petrified. I looked down at my arms. The skin was starting to turn gray. I bravely looked down at the ground. Hello there. The serpent sprang into action. I screamed like a fucking pussy. Author note. Spoon-fed Nasaverse lore for beginners, Taiga Duju edition. 12.000 BC. Greek gods and titans. Basically foreigners from a dead civilization. Have hyper-advanced tech including nanomachines. They were essentially a Noah's Ark and a Deus Ex Machina, except that Noah, or in this case, all of their passengers, survivors, former masters, died on board. They came to Earth and helped humans build Atlantis. Got wrecked by Safar, but left their existence as a humanoid terminal. In other words, they became natives, divine spirits and the like. The Greek gods we know in myths. Safar, Velber 02. A humanoid giant of colossal proportions with bunny ears. Grows bigger the more she consumes. The second ship deployed from a hyper-advanced mechastar with an AI, named Velber, Death Star, and Skynet on steroids. Terminator supercomputer. Her sole purpose is to annihilate all sapient life forms including gods. Battled with Mars, one of the machine gods. She liked him and took his weapon as a souvenir. Photon ray. Got nuked by primordial X-kalibuuuur. I know, the word doesn't make sense. Neither does alien Greek machine gods. Random dude, not King Arthur of course. Wields primordial Excalibur made by the 6th phase of Avalon. Sees Bunny Titan. Blast nuke. X-kalibuuuur. Iphicles. Had a nightmare that belonged to one of the machine titans who got eaten and absorbed into Safar. At one point felt Safar's inner thoughts. Nightmare got crashed by Hero of Justice, a friend of his past life. He has a psychological debate about, well, honor and justice with the Hero of Justice. Wakes up with a splitting headache that leads to amnesia. All's well, ends well. Phew. A monumental effort on my part for all the foreshadowing. God. Review to tell me what this was like. I hope this wasn't too difficult. It's gonna be hard to simplify this. Anyways, the next chapters might take a while. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 5, Grace from Thy Finger. Author note. The Catch Me If You Can Snake race begins. I added a section at the bottom of the previous chapter to explain some easy lore to beginners, just in case. Anyways, Safar 8 Machine Titan Iphicles sees a tiny shard of Machine Titan's past data that was absorbed into Safar saved from the nightmare by a mental configuration of his past, Phrenicute amnesia. Yeah, roughly in this order. So, he's not exactly a part of the Machine Titan. Close though. As for why he saw Safar's inner side, we'll get to that later. It doesn't make sense? Why was he friends with Shiro? Yeah, wait for it. P.S. The not self-insert tag exists for a reason. Also, Iphicles times Alcides pairing or not, it wouldn't affect the story either way. Chill. My planned pairing for Iphicles is a surprise guest from a foreign land anyway. No, not Bunny Titan. Not Altera Attila. That's time travel, lol. Chapter 5 Grace from Thy Finger. Do you know what it feels like when a Jormungand ripoff is after you? Yes, like that. You run like the little bitch you are. And ran I did. I ran with the power of Zeus's overcharged Master Bolt, which was to say, like a malfunctioning vibrator on ultra-high voltage. I was shaking so damn hard that even a frail leaf in a thunderstorm would have felt sorry for me. I mean, goddamn. She's thick as a tree, and those scales look like small bronze shields with their polished glint. I can see a million little reflections of a pathetic wimp screaming for his life in those scales. Wait, that's me. Yeah. Haha. It would have been funny if that snake wasn't so damn fast. Anyone would probably freak out too if some humongous snake with this "I eat saltwater crocodiles for breakfast" kind of killer look comes after them. I mean, just look at this reptile. This giant anaconda monster was the purest definition of suffocating things to death by constriction. A herpetophobia's worst nightmare. A noose incarnate. This was a snake so badass that it can make a hardened warrior wet. Literally. Trust me, your urinary bladder can't take on this level of badassery either. Your muscles will turn into jelly and your legs into mush. From the way its fangs leaked corrosive acid-like poison with every hiss, that expression was quite accurate in terms of venom. No, I'm not getting bitten by those nasty things. I raised my pace and ran as fast as my weak-ass legs could carry my sorry ass. After our initial contact, my plan for the day was to jump into the river in front of me. However, I saw a fin cut through the surface, generating massive currents with a casual flick of what seemed like a fishtail. The great waves splashed onto the shore, dazing me and the serpent for a few seconds, which was long enough for me to reconsider my life-threatening options. Underwater date with river Joss? Nah. Intelligent apes like me knew better. Homo sapiens can't breathe water. And they absolutely can't survive getting chased to death by a freaking megalodon inside its territory. So you see, there was only one way out, one option that included using my super ultimate secret anti-monster noble phantasm. I breathed in, I breathed out. I closed my eyes. I opened them. I felt the power of courage circulate through my veins, burning them with scorching passion. I nodded once. I was ready. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nigerundeo. As my instincts always say, survival comes to the guy who can outrun monster snakes to see another day. So, several near-death experiences later, I found myself sprinting through the deep forest in hope of the trees acting as some sort of obstacle course. The good news was that my Mycenae now had a new pile of firewood. The bad news was that the forest didn't act as an obstacle course. Not at all. With every slither, the scaly mountain of muscle bulldozed through trees, knocking the thick vegetation down to the ground, pulverizing the wood, and grinding it into the mud with its weight. Rocks and dirt flew into the air every time its tail dug into the ground to provide stability and redirecting its snout, with its head itself providing more than enough power to act like a pseudo-wrecking ball, smashing down the thin matchsticks, aka pine trees. That stood in its way. A military tank would have been more subtle. Gah. A giant mass of muscle struck me from beside, lifting me off my feet and into the air. If it wasn't for the dagger I hastily slid in between ourselves milliseconds before impact, my lungs may have well ruptured from the strike alone. I flew through the air, spinning as I felt lightheaded from the sudden flow of blood. Why not use my sword and spear? Well, I only had a bronze dagger on me at the time of our delightful encounter, so I wasn't exactly loaded. Hell, my royal father is going to kill me if he found out I died because I wasn't vigilant enough. I mean, sure, why not carry my spear and sword 24/7? Not like I was nearly squeezed into meat paste in my crib. What could I possibly expect? That some giant-ass snake might murder me when my guard was down? Sheesh. Okay. Maybe I was a little too careless. Just a little. Believe me, I'm now regretting the optimistic choices I made in my short life, more than ever before. Going out for a little walk all on my own? That's an open invitation for suicide. Really, what was I thinking? Probably nothing. Away, and here comes the landing. Landing strategy? Roll with the momentum. Gah. I spat out a mouthful of blood. My body pinballed off several branches and trees until I finally came to a halt before a slab of jagged rock. The ragged edges cut through my backside like long talons. Thankfully, the injuries itself was superficial. Blood gushed from my back and down my ankles, creating a pool of fresh blood at my feet. The scars were shallow enough to not show bone, at the very least. Small mercies. Actually, to look at the bright side, the serpent kind of made me a favor. You see, its mystic eyes of petrification had several limits, so to speak, ranging from the effective distance to the period of maintained sight. For example, the range for maximum petrification was approximately 10 meters, and it needed to maintain visual contact with me to establish the Medusa effect. Do not look? Easier said than done. I roamed my eyes over the terrain, trying to sense where the serpent would attack next. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something tremble. Help! Exclamation point. A girl. A girl, for God's sake. In this goddamn forest. Goddamn. I really should stop cursing when I'm stressed. Ancient Greece is a bad place for atheists. Anyways, what is a girl doing here? In the midst of the forest where beasts dwell? No, right now, I've got to get here out of here. How? Stop bitch slapping me, you overgrown reptile. I rolled to the side on instinct. The ground where I was standing erupted as the tip of a black tail stabbed through the air like a spear. However, the assault didn't stop there. The tip of its tail twitched. Then, it blurred. A tail rammed into my gut from beside with the force of a runaway train. This time, the tail bent like a hook, anchoring its tip into my insides and tearing them apart. A large blob of blood rose up from my throat and out of my nostrils. My ears rang. Shit. The pain is making it hard to concentrate. Its head emerged from the ground nearby, yellow eyes gleaming with malice and arcane energy. I felt my skin crackle. That sign. No time to waste. I scooped up the very much paralyzed girl in my arms, then hoisted her over my shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Hey, practicality comes first. A boy needs to adjust his grip, you know? Buckle up, lady. Here comes Iphicles, and you're guaranteed a very thrilling ride. Despite the burst of additional adrenaline this whole damsel in distress situation gave me, it didn't take me that far. With every step, every dodge, I felt myself slowing down, and it was not only the blood loss and the intestine injuries that were causing it. You see, she was weighing me down. No, don't get me wrong, I didn't mean it as an insult. She wasn't fat at all. The thing is, the girl didn't weigh much, at first. However, as the seconds ran by, I felt her pressure increase on my shoulder, as if someone was slowly amping up the gravity around me. Crack. I felt something snap in my right ankle. Shit. I saw the serpent closing in. With a grunt, I managed to shield the girl with my body, while hoping that the serpent would take the bait, me. It did. With its jaws open wide, it bared its venomous fangs, spittle flying, ready to pump its lethal dose into my shoulder. And that was the opening I was looking for. I spun around with my fist raised. Punch him? Of course not. I have something better. I opened my palm. By the way, did you know that sodium chloride had purifying qualities and evil-warding properties in old Asian myths? They used to sprinkle it on shrines and holy grounds to, well, do this. A sizzling sound was heard as smoke rose from the cracks between my fingers. Well, I always wondered what my salt would look like if it was lit up by the embers of Hestia. Begone thought. With a roar, I slammed a fistful of burning salt right into its mystic eyes. It definitely wasn't so mystic right now. The snake screeched in anguish as its head slammed against the ground once more. To be fair, the old shamans, priests, and maidens would have cringed at the amount of unruliness I displayed in what should have been a divine ceremony. In my defense, I was desperate, and I needed to improvise. Anyways, the important thing was that my gamble worked. I leapt up with my uninjured foot like a disfigured superhero, both hands wrapped around the hilt of my bronze dagger as I brandished it up to the heavens and right into the roof of the serpent's open jaw. I immediately then planted my injured foot inside its lower jaw like a crutch, prying its entire mouth open, and gritted my teeth against the excruciating agony it brought. The pain was extreme indeed. The broken bones in my foot mashed into the torn flesh of my ankle, drilling into them, ripping the tendons apart. However, I didn't yield. With my uninjured foot burrowed into the ground and the other keeping the jaws from snapping me in half, I twisted the dagger with all my strength, stabbing it deeper within its thick skull from beneath. A little more. Just a little more. I strained with all my might. I was fighting not only for my life but also for the girl behind me. Failure was not an option. I felt something pop out of one of my sockets. My arm. My grip slackened. My body has betrayed me when I most needed it. Or was it I who betrayed my body? No surprise from the torture I gave it. With renewed vigor, the monster clenched its jaw, nearly breaking my neck with immense pressure. Electrifying pain shot through my back. With only one remaining arm supporting the dagger, and my other dislocated shoulder pushed against the roof of its jaw, it seemed like my spinal cord couldn't hold out for much longer. My hand slipped from the hilt. The jaw slammed down, along with the protruding hilt. The hilt of the dagger dug into the crevice of my newly cracked spine with the full force of its bite. I couldn't help it. I screamed. Through my blurry vision, I saw the girl, motionless, frozen in time. What would become of her if I die here? No. Never. My right kneecap broke apart, causing me to fall on one knee. I saw a flash of metal. There it was, the hilt of the dagger, still stuck in its upper jaw, ready to slam down like a battering ram. In the minuscule space of time I had left, I did the unthinkable. I punched upwards. Bending backward and ignoring the cracking sensation of my splintered spine, I caught the end of the descending dagger with my fist. Blood gushed out of my teeth from the sheer force I exerted. Inch by inch, I pushed my fist upwards and forced my body into position. My ears popped. One of them stopped working. I didn't care. Roaring like a rabid animal, I slammed my shoulder into the roof of its jaw, forcing the bronze blade into the soft flesh of the snake's mouth. The snake screeched in agony and opened its jaw once more. There was no way I didn't capitalize on that single chance I had left. I smashed my fist into the hilt of the dagger. My bones fractured, and some of them shattered and pierced through my skin. I didn't care. Again and again and again and again, I repeatedly smashed my broken fist against the hilt of the bloodstained dagger. By that point, my fist was already reduced to a bloody pulp of flesh and bones. Blood splattered down onto my face and rained down on my body with every punch I threw. There was so much blood in my windpipe that I couldn't even breathe. I didn't care. Strange enough, there was not a speck of hatred nor ill will in my mind. Nothing, but pure killing instinct. It could have been seconds or maybe hours. I couldn't remember much about what happened after. What I knew was that I kept drilling into its flesh by punching the dagger like a madman obsessed with a piston machine, while my other useless arm hung limply beside my body and waved itself around like a drowning conductor. Again and again and again and again. Finally, I felt the dagger puncture through the hard bones and sink through something soft. Its brain. A great shudder traveled through its body, and I felt the snake let out one last breath. Its body crashed onto the forest floor, flattening the trees that were still lucky enough to have kept standing amidst the chaos. I was ejected out of its mouth, and I kept rolling across the ground until I came to my final stop. The girl. Only, it wasn't a girl. Not anymore. In her place, there stood a queen unlike no other. With raven black hair, emerald green eyes, porcelain skin, and earrings made of peacock feathers, she looked like, well, Lady Hera. I felt my lips quirk upwards. But of course, I should have seen it coming. A convenient damsel in distress in the midst of the beast-infested forest, one which somehow managed to significantly increase weight over a short span of time. In my defense, I was panicking. Not that it matters now. Why? Even though it was one vague word, I understood Hera perfectly. Why didn't I leave the girl behind? Why risk my life for someone I don't even know? Why go to such extents to save a nobody? Why? Why wouldn't I? You do not need a reason to do things that need to be done. A creed to be upheld. From the way Hera furrowed her brows, she got my message. You sought to seek salvation for others despite being so weak yourself? I chuckled, then wheezed from the blood that was submerging my lungs. With great power comes great responsibility. I do not have great power. For someone who can't save his own skin, saving others should be laughable. I see the logic there. I really do. Self-preservation is not selfishness but wisdom, as long as you do not harm others in the way. Yes, I get it. So what? Why wouldn't I? That was my answer. Is empathy a crime? Is caring for others a crime? Hypocrisy it may be, but that's what makes a human humane. Hera gritted her teeth. She seemed to be battling within. Seconds turned into minutes. The silence was suffocating. Oh, wait. That was just my lungs malfunctioning. Silly me. I giggled, delirious from the lack of oxygen and common sense in my brain. I wouldn't be surprised if half of my brain cells were dead by now. Hera's eyes twitched. A long, insufferable sigh escaped her lungs. What shalt thou seeketh most? Hera seemed exhausted. Defeated, even. I giggled again. Everything was funny. Hiki, Lady Hera, I think you already know. Hera closed her eyes. Indeed. When she opened her eyes once more, there was a fierce flame dancing within. Art thou ready to pay the price? The price for your insolence that you wish for me, a god, to change. I smiled brightly. Always. I answered with a bloody grin. To ask a god, an immortal being to change her nature? Of course, it comes with a price. A price I'm willing to pay. In retrospect, I wasn't thinking straight. This is ancient Greece we are talking about. Duh. Well, too late now. Very well. Let us proceed, and let the fates be our witnesses. Hera gave me a predatory smile, one bloodthirsty enough to ensnare my soul. I bravely looked the other way. Maybe I've made a pact with the devil. Contrary to Iphicles' expectations, the ceremony turned out to be brutally simple, in more ways than one. As a matter of fact, it started with self-mutilation and ended with semi-cannibalism. To elaborate, the Queen of Olympus bit off her left ring finger and fed it to her champion, forcing the golden ichor-dripping flesh down his throat with a psychokinetic push, as a mother bird does to her newborn hatchling. In more ways than one, what she did was just exactly that. A burning sensation ran through Iphicles' neck, branding his skin with a divine flash of white light. When the light died down, a simple name was etched onto his previously unblemished skin around his throat. Ralph Asigmatro, the star of Hera. From then on, Herastra shall be thy name. Unknown to him, this was Hera's own subtle attempt at favoritism. Glory may blaze brighter, but starlight shall be eternal. Thus, a fate eternal. Author note. One word from the Department of HBP, Horny Bonk Patrol, Harem? You know what Hera stands for, right? Harem? Seriously? Do you know what happened to Jason? Yeah. To be honest, this was a lot easier to rewrite compared to the last chap. The story progression shall change drastically from the next chap, compared to the old version. Review for Snake Fetish Queen and her new finger. Wait. Ahem. I mean, her new boy toy. Somehow, that sounds even worse. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 6, Behind the Scenes. Author note. I'm going to end this foolish feud between Wincest revolutionists and anti-incest preservationists. Alcides and Iphicles' relationship will be the same as the Dioscuri, thou art I art thou kind of stuff, and Iphicles will have 2 heroine roots at most, ones that do not involve incest. The pairings are also different from the old version. Yes, no brain-dead jacking-off style harem mode. This is not porn verse. This is final, so please don't waste your breath debating in the reviews. It's not a hentai comment section for heaven's sake. LOL. Now, onto the plot. Chapter 6, Behind the Scenes. Inside an endless, white, void, a mindscape of a boy with 2 souls. I was falling through a dream. Falling out of my nightmare. The nightmare of the dying titans from a lost planet. The survivors of a dead civilization. The nightmare of the white titan of gluttonous destruction. The cancerous cell of the traveling stars. I was falling through a dream. Falling out of my nightmare. Again and again. A voice was asking me. A familiar voice. What is honor? Again and again. Is it the vague promise of glory and fame? A fairy tale fabricated in blank and white? The courage of a hero that knows no bounds. A voice of a hero of justice. A voice I both admire and hate. I must answer. Even in a dream. What is the precious honor you cherish as your justice? I'll answer you. For me, honor means doing what is necessary to protect my people and my family. To me, honor means responsibility. Responsibility to look after my people as Prince of Mycenae. Responsibility to change the tragic fate of Alcides, my sister. Responsibility to care for my parents, who gave me life and blessed me with the best imaginable environment. And in order to fulfill that responsibility, it is essential that I pledge myself to the higher forces of this world. The Greek gods. To be completely honest, I do not approve of a lot of what the Greek gods did in their myths, but who I am to point out their faults. Am I qualified to spout what is righteous while I myself have next to no actual knowledge about them? I know nothing about their past as the vessels of a dying civilization. I know nothing of their creators' hopes, dreams, and ideology. Does that excuse their wrongdoings? Of course not. However, in the end, I'm nothing but a single human. Gods, divine spirits. They are not something you could judge with humanity, ethics, or the law. Gods are a force of nature, an embodiment of a concept, an overpowered being of completely different mentalities. Can a human understand an ant? Can a dragon understand a human? Can a god understand a dragon? The pyramid goes on. We, humans, are at the very bottom of it. A human does not feel remorse when they accidentally step on an ant. Why would a dragon fuss over the death of a few humans, much less a god? A mere individual before this grand scale of existence called gods means absolutely nothing. Nothing, unless you yourself is significant enough to change the entire rail of history on your own. With dignity, I shall grovel. With respect, I shall pray. The biggest weapon of humanity is wisdom, and with that, I shall gain power from the very gods. The biggest enemy always lies not within others, but within your own self. Your rage, your hesitation, your malice, your fear, your greed, your selfishness, all that makes us blind to a brighter future. That is my justice. A stark contrast to your creed of selflessness. Wouldn't you agree, old friend? You, who were as hypocritic as I. Ha ha ha. You actually made me a decent faker. Ha, ha, ha. Zeus leaned back on his marble throne with his chin resting on one fist. His gaze lingered upon his newest project. On the top of Mount Olympus, there sat a great glass saucer, a palace of futuristic designs. Although only a select few knew about its structure. Invisible to the mortal eye by optical camouflage, it was completely transparent. If one were to look up at MT Olympus, one would only see the strong sunlight that shone on the hilltops and the clear blue sky high above. By all means, it wouldn't have been possible for the palace to sit on the tiny mountaintop if it wasn't for the fact that the gigantic monument was practically floating, minus the pole that connected it to the rocky mountain tip. Inside the very center of the plate-shaped palace, there was the throne room, reserved for the highest authority of the Greek pantheon. Zeus opened his azure eyes and gazed down at the transparent floor from his throne. Theos Klerinomia, Code Zeus. Being an alien invention and a deus ex machina of a fallen civilization from a faraway galaxy that died out eons ago, the Olympians had several quirks no other native gods on planet Earth had. One of them was the Klerinomia. Made from an alien metal called orichalcum, Klerinomia was a mix of nanomachines that were used to create hybrid organic life forms such as demigods, and when applied, it greatly enhances strength, performance, and longevity. Klerinomia could also act as an individual mana generator, one capable of sustaining a non-divine spirit without an external mana source. Dionysus and Perseus were some of his most successful projects so far, and two others were about to follow. One was his daughter, the other, his most ambitious test subject. The Klerinomia in Zeus left eye started to swirl as a vision similar to clairvoyance took shape in his mind. The Olympians each had a special Klerinomia and Zeus was no different. Zeus' Klerinomia carried an extremely unique property, one other than granting incredible power. The function of autarky. The power of absolute control. Are you sure it was wise to grant him a fragment of it? An eerily cheerful voice chirped from Zeus' side. It was a floating gold sheep, a sphere of fleece, bobbing up and down in the air. It was almost a comical sight if not for the immense heat and blinding light it generated. The sheep continued as if his appearance was completely normal. After all, however minuscule it may be, there's a slim possibility that its mothership might get alerted. We lost all our equipment in the Great Wars, and the artifacts that are still functional wouldn't last for another millennium. We are a mere shadow of what we once were. I think it may be unwise to take unnecessary risks, especially risks such as creating a volatile hybrid. He's not one of us, and we both know that his mind is more mortal if not downright alien than divine. To think that Hera of all goddesses would go so far as to dash. The risk does not outweigh the potential benefits of this project. Need I remind you of that, Apollo? The king's tone suggested that his decision wasn't up for debate. It was final, and further nagging would only result in his wrath. The sheep squeaked, literally squeaked, and dissolved into beads of golden light with a small pop. Zeus' eyes hadn't moved a single inch the entire time the sun god was talking, glued to the tiny soul visible in his eagle vision. A soul of black and white. He would realize that singularity from 1,000 miles away. The mighty king smiled. He, of course, knew all the risks the sun god warned him about. Yet, he couldn't find it in himself to bring an end to this miracle, which was produced by pure coincidence. Originally, Zeus thought of creating a monster to be slayed, like he already did for Theseus, Poseidon's demigod. However, this time, he didn't want to make the monster into a plain product, like Asterios, the Minotaur. No, he wanted to test his own limits of creativity with this one. When he had explored the outskirts of Sapphira's gargantuan carcass several hundred years ago, he noticed that something was signaling at him from the depths of her stomach. It was a signal with the same frequency and pattern only the machine gods used, and Zeus was unable to ignore this. So, he ventured into the deep cave that was Sapphira's stomach, and came upon a tiny orb of half-decayed metal, no bigger than a mortal's fist. It was the tiny orb that was producing the signal, and Zeus recognized at once that it was a shard of a core that belonged to the fallen machine titan that fought so far. Reaching down, he held it up to his eyes and analyzed it. To his great shock, he realized that the orb was half digested and absorbed, thus retaining the same qualities of the cyborg matter from the white titan, even after the host's death. Zeus knew that the carcass of Safar was secretly producing a legion of anti-god giants, and he also knew the sheer tenacity, productivity, and adaptability the white titan's flesh had. Any attempts at containing the body of the white titan had ended as a failure, and since the carcass still had an immune system to repel invaders, brute forcing his way through was not an option. Therefore, the tiny orb Zeus found was by itself a miracle, not to mention its potential as an energy resource. That was 700 years ago. In conclusion, Zeus was unable to crack the secret that was the orb, though his efforts were not in vain. He managed to glean a valuable insight that the orb could be fused to a bioorganic matter and a soul that was attached to it. Thus, Zeus used the first healthy baby with a strong soul and robust vitality that was born in the vicinity and under his control. The twin half-brother of his daughter. A baby named Iphicles. Zeus didn't think that the fusion would be a success. By all means, he predicted that the orb would turn Iphicles into a demi-Safar-like monstrosity at best, a future monster for his daughter to slay, and grant him a gruesome death at worst. To his surprise, the fusion was a complete success. He noticed afterward on closer inspection that the baby had a most peculiar soul. It was, by all means, more matured and had scars that indicated the presence of spiritual cracks that was hastily healed. Zeus hypothesized that this special soul was the reason for stabilizing the otherwise volatile core, and the main contributing factor to the boy's continued survival and sanity. Little did Zeus know that his choice of Iphicles was actually a decision induced by Ly, the collective will of humanity. Ly had known about the special soul that was Iphicles and came to the decision that he was a dimensional traveler from a different time in a parallel world. Fearing that his existence might cause a cosmic paradox that results in a world-ending scenario due to an error in a quantum time lock, or in other words, fucking up the fate of humanity and its connection with parallel worlds. Ly decided to use the orb Zeus found to destroy Iphicles' soul. Contrary to both Ly and Zeus' expectations, the orb had not only served to strengthen the soul that was Iphicles, but it also managed to incorporate itself into his soul as its core, thus making them virtually inseparable. Ly, as you can imagine, went full paranoid mode. It even considered summoning its guard dog Emy to personally end the boy in his infancy. Luckily for Iphicles, Ly seemed to decide that was too radical of an approach and instead influenced Hera to direct her attention towards the bastard daughter of Zeus. Hera sent a massive snake to kill both of the twins, and everything seemed to be going as planned to Ly's delight. However, Iphicles had managed to not only buy enough time for Alcides to awake, but he had also lit the fire that was the protective instinct hidden inside the baby girl. The rest was, quite literally, history. Ly didn't need to try again, since Iphicles had attracted the ire of Hera by praying to her for sparing his sister, which she did not, which then resulted in her chasing him down with a baby Jormungandr. Yes, it was actually the baby of that mythical world snake. To Ly's dismay, Iphicles turned the tables around by somehow fishing the maternal instincts out of Hera like a well-trained gigolo, making her adopt him, and by his connection, having her indirectly forgive Alcides. At this point, Ly was convinced that granting a swift death to Iphicles was the best course of action for humanity, and tried summoning her guard dog Emy to kill him in his sleep. And for some bizarre reason, instead of killing him, her guardian was summoned inside his dreams and slayed the nightmare that was plaguing Iphicles, contributing to his assassination target's mental well-being. Multiple times. Finally, after much deliberation, Ly reached the conclusion to simply observe Iphicles for a while. Perhaps he would kill himself with his own stupidity, which was very likely in Ly's calculations. Ly could only hope for the boy's suicidal tendencies to get the better of him. Unaware of the underwater battle between Ly and the traveler soul named Iphicles, Zeus sat back and examined the boy who was adopted by Hera. While it was a surprise that Iphicles managed to conciliate Hera and appease her ridiculously high standards, his gaining divinity only meant a more advanced control over the boy if he were to step out of line. Or at least, that was what Zeus believed. Ly begged to differ. Either way, the king of Olympus was quite pleased with his decision in keeping Iphicles alive. It was only a matter of time before the machine titan's metal casing was completely corroded by its integration into the boy's flesh, and already he could see traces of the white titan seeping out of its confines. It would be intriguing to see how that would affect the boy's growth. And if Iphicles proved to be a worthy hero, Zeus would personally allow him to join them in their fight against the Gigas in the following Gigantomachia. If not, then. Zeus saw through the eyes of his daughter who carried his blood in her veins. He saw her run towards her brother who was absent-mindedly rubbing his branded throat beside Hera. The king chuckled. If Iphicles proves to be a threat, he always had a safety procedure nearby. After all, madness was a tragic illness that was most known to be triggered by his dear queen, especially amongst demigods. Sister-killing brother, it was bound to break her mental walls and make room for him to plant some seeds for easier control. All for the greater good. Author note. Aeon rap. This was the reason for the foreshadowing. Zeus being Zeus, all for the greater good, and Aloi being, rightfully, paranoid. Aloi, a future soul from a different world branch. No, this might cause a cosmic paradox or quantum time lock. Kill him. Oh, I know. I'll induce Zeus' attention on him. Zeus will turn him into a monster with that orb. The soul would disappear and his body would be slain. I'm a genius. Zeus, Let me see how this little guinea pig will react to this bioweapon generator. Oh, that soul looks good enough. Twin half-brother of my daughter? So what? Iphicles. Wait, what? Why am I in ancient Greece? Why can't I remember anything about my past life? Eloi and Zeus. Huh? Yeah. I originally thought about stretching out the reveal but decided against it. The reveal in my older version was a little too sudden, and I thought to lay out the reveal to make it easier to digest in this version. All for the sake of later development. By the way, the reason for Iphicles being here involves 3 words: redemption, accident, and true magic. Oh, Asterios is still very much alive. Theseus is still 1 year younger than Iphicles. Oh boy. Please review to let me know your thoughts. And no more horny comments. The horny bonk police will send you to horny jail. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 7, Spear of the Foreigner. Author note. Recap of the last chap. Zeus is for the greater good / mad scientist, and Aloi is Iphicles' stalker / wannabe murderer. Yeah. And my end goal is fate /0 with a big twist. Chaldea make. Meh, dunno. Maybe, someday. Now, time for the main heroine. And read the warning. Warning, there will be some depiction of child rape. Sakura meta style. Why? It's ancient Greece and Naciverse. At least it's not a goat gangbang. If you are traumatized by such content, I advise skipping the first section of this chapter. My reason for involving this was because really adds up to the ruthlessness of the world and the silly stigma around how a raped girl is less pure and dirty, which frankly makes no sense. Especially hits hard for the main heroine scene. Sakura vibes, yes. Chapter 7, Spear of the Foreigner. In the shady part of a slum district marketplace, inside a musty, smoke-filled room, rape warning. The lamps rocked back and forth on the wooden ceiling as they cast long shadows over the stained walls. Wine cups were scattered over a large stone table, and beside it, a large bed leaned sideways to the wall in a most precarious manner. The bed let out large creaks as its mattress threatened to give way underneath the combined weight of its passenger, a fat bald man of 30 and a young girl no older than 10. The piggish man was hunched over the backside of the girl like the world's most ugly blanket, while the girl said nothing and simply glared at the empty wall. The oily man huffed and puffed as he rocked his flabby hips back and forth, his sweat splattering onto the girl's shoulders and onto the stained bedsheets. He grabbed the girl by her long, dark purple hair and violently shoved her cheek into a pillow that was riddled with lice. The girl merely sneered coldly up at him, her otherworldly beautiful face devoid of any other emotion than a raw display of disgust mixed with disdain. That seemed to be a poor choice on her side, as it both served to rile up and invigorate the man even more, as he suddenly upped his pace and his piston movements. His acts of defilement continued as he repeatedly slapped his palm against the small behind of the girl under him, leaving a series of red hand marks on her pearl-white skin. The man was enjoying the girl's contemptuous reactions to the fullest, which could be seen from the way he moaned like a bloated bull in heat every time the girl snarled at his face. "Arg, take this, ya savage little bitch," he roared in a strained voice. His portly belly trembled. With a groan, he let a shiver pass through his body as he released his load inside the young girl. Grabbing the young girl's face in his meaty hands, he pulled himself out and forced her head towards the tip of his member. Filth sprayed all over the girl's face, staining her nose and red lips in a murky yellowish white. Rape end. Satisfied with himself, the man flopped onto the dirty bed, out of breath. The girl stared at the wheezing man who was her owner. Her hand twitched. A few seconds passed as she deliberated her next actions. The man was breathing heavily, and there was no chance he would survive if she smothered him with the blanket. However, the consequences would be lethal. She gingerly touched the metal collar on her throat. The magic in it would tear her throat off if she harmed her owner, ran away, or released her collar. It also electrocuted her if she misbehaved. She didn't have any choice but to obey. "What are you looking at, savage? You are going to join the beast fight this night. Hurry up and prepare yourself, dimwit." The slave girl clenched her teeth. Oh, she will make this sniveling piece of shit regret the day he crawled out of his mother's womb. One day, she shall have her revenge, one day. Slave girl POV. Everything went wrong the day she snuck onto that damn ship. Skye cursed her impulsiveness for the 100th time. Skye was born on the Isle of Skye as the eldest daughter of Ardgraim of Lethra. While her name wasn't the most ingenious of names, Skye loved the land she was named after, and she was proud to be bestowed that name, for it was proof that she was the royalty of the Isle. Besides, she will get another name fit for a queen once she reached adulthood. She couldn't wait for that day. Well, quite literally. Skye was a very active girl and had a spirit that was more fiery and wild than most hardened warriors. She was not one to idly spend her days, twirling her thumbs and hoping for a knight in shining armor to scoop her up in his arms. No, she wanted to forge her own fate, her own path. Thus, it was only natural that she snuck into a ship that she overheard her father talk about with his men. The ship was bound for a foreign land, one the likes of the world have never seen. With her chest full of hope for an adventure, little Sky hid on board with the cargo just before the crew set sail. A few days passed by peacefully, with nothing to disturb the ship. However, on the 5th day, a great storm hit the seas. The waves rose higher than the snowy mountains, crashing against each other like a war between giants. Salt and foam assaulted the reinforced wood of the ship, threatening to turn it over. It was only thanks to the shaman and the set of runes he carved into the ship beforehand that prevented the gales from tearing them apart. For a moment, everyone thought it would be all right. Yes, the storm was sudden as it was brutal, but it was not enough to destroy their ship. If they waited out the storm and endured the worst of it, there was a high chance that they would come out safely in one piece. Then, just like that, their hopes were dashed. There was no surviving that. It was simply impossible. A majestic, tornado-calling roar that far surpasses that of the kraken. A body of scales thicker than the sturdiest of walls. A great piercing horn of white. An exoskeleton that was reminiscent of a coral reef shaped into 1,000 blades. A great body that dwarfs a dragon. The beast of raging waves. The mighty Creed. Everyone despaired. Everyone, except for Sky. She knew that there was nothing she could do. If the Creed so much as raised a finger, they will be doomed. Sky didn't fucking care. If she was to die due to her own carelessness, then so be it. She would never give up till the last breath left her body. And when she dies, she shall die with integrity. The little girl stood on the top of the ship's mast as she faced the mighty beast without an ounce of fear, glaring straight into its white blue eyes even as the beast raised a hand up to the skies. The beast roared once more, and Sky shouted back. The waves split apart, and the girl knew no more. Oh, there's a girl on that beach. Whoa. This bitch is a foreigner, isn't she? We struck gold. That'll fetch a hefty price. Quick, tie her up. It wouldn't do if she started panicking. What do you think happened to her? A shipwreck? I bet. Lord Poseidon was quite angry these past few days. Maybe a sea monster out in the ocean. Who cares? Let's sell her off when we can. I'm dying to get some coin. Voices. Strange languages echoed in her head. She felt so weak. The taste of salt. Seawater. Cold. Wet. Rope. Rough rope, tying her up. Must. Wake up. Must. Sky fainted. Pain. Burning pain around her neck. A collar? She touched her neck with trembling fingers. Her bleary eyes opened wide. A Geas collar. An inhumane tool of war to control slaves via soul contract magic. Ah. You woke up. Good, good. Your new owner will be pleased. You understand my words, do you? It'll be a shame if the translation magecraft has failed. Sky jolted and turned around. She was on a bed, and standing beside it was a thin man. She disliked him immediately. Owner? What owner? Where am I? Release this collar, she demanded. The thin man smiled coldly. Good, good. In good health, check. Defiant spirit, check. Slightly matured body, check. About 9-year-olds, check. Beauty, check and double check. My, I can't believe how lucky I am. Your price was worth 2 oxen size of gold. Wonderful. The man looked up at the mortified girl with a nasty smirk. Oh, and don't think of running, harming me or your owner, or disobeying us. Your collar will send severe pain through your spine. We wouldn't want to break you. Why would we? Your owner would be dismayed if you didn't react to his games. Sky's face was a pale white. While she was admittingly rash at times, she was by no means stupid. She knew that she had no choice left but to obey. The thin man chuckled and opened a door to let in the fattest and smelliest man Sky had ever met. Greet your new owner, slave, he said gleefully. A month had passed since her enslavement. From noon to dusk, that pig would come and rape her, satisfying his rotten sadistic desires. She didn't give in, not one bit. She knew that only worked to stoke his despicable fetishes, though she couldn't act as if he had broken her. Her pride wouldn't allow that. Yes, her virginity was stolen, so what? As if that little pecker of his could make her feel anything. He really had a sorry excuse for a dick. What followed after the rape was far more jarring. In an underground, war pit, as the pig called it, she was forced to fight beasts. Every single night. When they put the collar on her, the slave merchants had done a thorough examination of her body and discovered that she was a well-trained warrior. One thing led to another, and before she knew it, she was sent to fight in the bloody ring. Apparently, it was another one of the pig's fetishes. Something about warrior girls. She couldn't care less. Night after night, she fought wild beasts from different parts of the land. Sometimes it was a lion or a mountain lion. Sometimes it was a striped lion called a tiger, and sometimes it was a spotted lion called a cheetah. And every time she emerged victorious, she felt hatred surge through her veins. Hatred at the people who cheered at the meaningless killing. Hatred at the people who wanted more innocent blood. She was not against killing or fighting. She was against the act of casting away life like cheap wine. Sky hated it. The girl sighed. Yet again, she was forced to fight lest she is discarded. Wiping away the last smears of the pig's bodily fluids from her face, Sky stood up and twirled her spear. Then, she kicked up the other spear lying on the ground with the tip of her toe, caught it in her other hand, and started whirling them around like daggers, one in each hand. Skye was an ambidextrous warrior, and that was what made her so popular in the underground pit. Her fighting style was like a dance, passionate yet deadly. She looked down at the polished bronze spears in her hands and grimaced. When could she break free? When could she stop this? She bit her lip. The doors in front of her slid open, and the cheering of the crowd sitting above the pit reached her ears. Her red eyes zeroed in on her opponent. It was a big bear. A female. Judging from her body, she was a mother. Was, being the keyword. From what she knew about the vermin operating these fights, the hunters had most likely killed the cubs or sold them off. The bastards. She gritted her teeth and raised her spear. I'm sorry, Skye whispered. She didn't expect the bear to do anything but rush forward, blinded by fury at losing her cubs. It didn't. Instead, the bear let out one sad growl. Its eyes sparkled with intelligence. The bear glanced at the collar, then at the pig that was sitting right above her. Skye widened her eyes. The bear was intelligent. It was no ordinary beast. Others she could kill, for they were in a sort of rage-induced frenzy. This? No. No, she couldn't kill this bear. The bear snorted. A flash of understanding passed through the beast's eyes, then acceptance. The bear leapt towards the girl. Startled by the bear's sudden assault, Skye's body moved on her own through a well-practiced stance. Her spears thrust forward and easily impaled the bear's body. One spear stabbed through its jaw and up the skull, and the other slid through the ribs and straight into its heart. It was instantaneous death. Almost as if. Skye's fingers left her spears as she stumbled back. Her arms felt numb. The bear, it let her kill it. The bear sacrificed itself for her. And she. Nuu. Mother. A heart-wrenching scream tore through the air and drowned out the booings of the speculators who were discontent with the anticlimactic ending. Skye raised both of her arms by pure instinct, just in time to block the overhead kick of a green-haired girl the same age as her. The kick the green-haired girl delivered had enough force to lift her entire body up into the air. Her eyes met the pig's beady little eyes. She suddenly knew what was going on. He planned it. All to pit another human, another girl of her age against her, in a life-and-death battle. Skye never wanted to kill another human so badly. No, not a human. He was a filthy mongrel. Wait, I didn't know that the bear was your mother. The people up there planned this. It was not my intention to kill her. Skye tried to calm the other girl, but to no avail. The girl's emerald green eyes were dilated and contorted with mindless fury. A sinking sensation, a feeling of dread filled Skye's gut. The girl was drugged. A few minutes passed by as Skye parried and deflected the other girl's blows, while the other continued her crazed assault. The crowd was cheering, their fists thumping against the stone walls as they laughed and cheered. The pig looked pleased, with a smug smile plastered onto his greasy face. Despair crept into her heart. She didn't know what to do. The girl was fast and strong, like a wild animal, and her physical strengths were enhanced by God knows what kind of drugs they pumped inside her. At least she wasn't defiled, like her. She could now smell a defiled woman from a mile away, from personal experience. A self-deprecating smile lifted her lips. Maybe she should kill the pig up there? At least, in this way, she could atone with her life. It seemed the only way. Just as she was about to direct her spear to the pig, a voice split through the chaos. Stop. Right. Now. The voice was calm. Too calm. Like the silence before the storm. It grasped the attention of every single person in the room, including the drugged girl. It was a sort of mystic charisma, Skye thought in the back of her numb mind. She too was captivated. Silence prevailed. A boy jumped from the only door leading to the exit from the speculator's seat and landed in the middle of the arena, right between her and the other girl, in one single leap. Before the green-haired girl could react, his hand made contact with her neck and gave her spine a little squeeze, followed by a small stab of his fingers. The girl crumpled onto the ground, unconscious, yet obviously unharmed in the slightest. Skye turned toward the boy and gave him a more cautious look. The boy was handsome. Charming, even. His left eye was a bright red, while his right eye was a vibrant gold. He had his wavy black hair tied in a ponytail behind his neck, and his lower body was shrouded with a vermilion Greek girdle, covered by a simple steel armor connected to a steel belt at his waist with the motif of a roaring lion in the middle, while his upper body, legs, and feet were completely bare. Crimson tattoos which radiated a divine aura were etched all over his body and across the left part of his face like a scar, standing out against his healthy brown skin. He carried a simple wooden club with pieces of jagged iron ingots that stuck out of it like spikes, and was the club burning on the inside. She could practically see the heated embers which were floating out of the cracks of his club. All in all, he was a striking figure that screamed authority. Skye's heart started to race. Hope reignited in her chest, like a flame. Is he a prince? Why was someone like him here? Could it be? The boy, who was about the age of 13, swept his eyes over the speculators who were frozen to their seats, unable to move, unable to speak. Even the pig was sweating buckets. Wait, was that fear she saw in his eyes? His eyes alone were more than enough to pin the bastards down by sheer force, Sky realized. He's furious. I shall cut to the chase, he began. I am Heracles, the star of Hera, and prince of Mycenae. I have come at the direct orders from the king to eradicate thou foul vermin from the face of the earth. We know of thy sins thou kind has committed. Illegal slaves, illegal fights, illegal poaching, rape, extortion, murder, drugs, all of the above and beyond. However, he raised a finger at the trembling men who fearfully stared down at him. The searing anger which bubbled beneath the surface disappeared, only to be replaced by an amicable smile and a light, carefree tone. I am willing to compromise. You see, I'm willing to let you go if you are willing to free your slaves and tell me the whereabouts of your storage, fields, and slave trade routes. I swear it upon the river Styx. Immediately, the men started to shout their most precious secrets, swearing a blood oath on the spot and releasing all their slaves. Sky felt disappointment surge up her chest. She knew what the prince was doing, and she could see why he did what he did. For the greater good, he was willing to turn a blind eye and let a few get away scot-free under his watch. She felt a small prickle on her neck as the collar detached itself from her skin and severed the magic contract with her soul. She was free. It was most anticlimactic indeed. The men rushed towards the only exit in the pit, eager to leave this place alive. They never saw it coming. Screams echoed in the hallway beyond the exit, followed by a series of wet crunches that were suspiciously similar to the sound of necks being snapped. The pig, him being too slow and fat to run along with the others, was the only one left in the seats. He trembled on his feet as the screams slowly began to dim. Finally, silence returned. A deadly silence. Plat, plat, plat. The sound of sandals against the wet floor echoed in the hallway. It grew nearer and nearer. Sky gulped. Who could have killed all the men in less than a minute? There were at least 100. And what happened to all the guards who should be guarding the exits? Most importantly, didn't he swear an oath to let them go free? Not that she was against it. As if noticing her quizzical look, the prince turned around and winked at her. She felt her cheeks flush. Stupid Sky, calm down, she screamed in her mind. I did follow my oath. I let them go to Uncle Hades. Also, I cleared the guards beforehand. As for who took care of those vermin, meet my sister, Alcides, or some call Heracles, the glory of Hera. And just as he finished speaking, a slightly bloodied woman stepped out of the exit and into the light. She had similar features to the prince, almost twin-like, except that her skin was a milky white, and both of her eyes shone molten gold. She was clad in Greek armor from head to toe unlike her half-nude brother, and was equipped with a sword and a round shield. She slashed the sword through the air, ridding her blade of the blood by brute force, and painting the walls red with the spray of blood. She smirked at her brother. Oh my, you are making me blush, dearest brother of mine. May I ask who are those two lovely ladies? Alcides, or Heracles' piercing gaze met hers. Sky lifted her chin and stared straight back. Heracles smiled, seemingly amused by her prideful attitude. She turned back to her brother. Well? She asked. Two warrior damsels in distress, was her brother's short answer. Heracles snorted. I'm not going to ask how that makes any sense. Before she knew what she was doing, Sky's mouth was already moving on its own. My name is Sky, the other girl, I do not know of. She was drugged. Anger bubbled up in Sky. Dark, searing hatred soon followed. She snarled and looked up at the pig who was doing his best imitation of a dead pig. To be honest, he was very good at that. The prince nodded. He looked the other way. Heracles. We arrived at this tragic scene with two unconscious girls on the ground. Nobody knew what happened to the fat man in the seats. Heracles blinked, then nodded sagely. Of course. While he deserved the punishment of Hades, maybe even he didn't deserve a spear up his ass and his penis. Most grotesque indeed. His fat was also skinned from his bones, layer after layer, when he was still alive. Poor pig. The prince nodded once more. Dear sister, I'm feeling a little tired. I shall sleep for a little while. Care to join me? His sister grinned most deviously. Why wouldn't I? Sky felt something warm well up from her heart. Those two. She must make the most of her time. The girl smiled sweetly at the doomed pig. The pig squeaked. For the first time since her capture, Sky laughed. I want pig meat for dinner, she whispered. A scream of agony echoed in the now empty pit of death. Author note. Iphicles/Heracles using the Myth strategy, wipes a tear from eye. I'm so proud. Yes, this is my version of Scathach's past. Yes, the Queen of the Shadows. The Witch of Doom Scath who slayed so many gods that she gained immortality from their blood or something. The first heroine. Hooray. I thought that it wouldn't be strange for her to be born around the golden age of ancient Greece, approximately 3000 BC in Nasaverse, since she was pretty much ancient. Immortal already when she trained CU. I know this is not historically accurate, but I believe that no one will be foolish enough to bring up this argument. Hey, this is Nasu. No, she can't use rune magic at this point. It's something she'll create much later on. She'll also get her name Scathach in that period. The creed? Oh, she'll have her revenge on the divine beast. Make good use of its skull. Promgi bulb material and all that. Oh, and before the snowflakes out there flame about NTR with the rape scene, let's just say it's not NTR if you aren't in a relationship in the first place, be it rape or consensual sex. I mean, are you dissing Sakura? She got fucked by House Matu in more ways than one. Aeon, yes. Atlanta. Per bear. Those bastards deserve the Fury treatment. No, she's not the second heroine. She's more like a little sister. I have another girl in mind for the second one. You know, blonde twins? Wink wink. As for the naming of Heracles, we will get back to it in the next chap as a flashback. Review and review again to your heart's content. It helps feed the new Scathach tag. Review for this long chapter. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 8, New Names and Encounters. Author note. A little peek into what Heracles was up to before Sky/Scathach Lily's rescue. I love how almost all the reviews comment about Sky's rape but not about how she accidentally killed Atlanta's mother bear lol. Yes, our twins will be summoned as a servant, one day. On we go. New Names and Encounters. A month before their grand rescue in the underground ring. 3 years had passed since the impromptu naming ceremony of Lady Hera. Iphicles, or who others call Heracles, was now a young man at the age of 13, a blessed prince who carried an air of royalty that made even kings bow in respect. What was once unblemished skin had crimson tattoos of divine heritage etched onto them, a visual side effect due to the consumption of Hera's ring finger. His right eye also changed into a vibrant gold that reminded him of the glint of a polished coin, which probably reflected the sudden awakening of divinity within his body. In these 3 years, a lot happened. For one, he crafted his very own weapon by accident in the forge. While that may make little sense, it was precisely what had happened. One day, he walked into the forge with a newly crafted oak club in his hand and saw a piece of iron laying on the forge. He had sought to retrieve the new sword and shield he had ordered for his sister and was just about to leave when a brash and idiotic idea crossed his mind. In these few years, he had completed his training from the best Mycenae could offer, and the king had recently started calling out far and wide for heroes who were willing to provide tutelage to the young prince and princess. In other words, he was bored. And boredom could do very dangerous things to a sound mind. So, the boy walked over to the piece of brittle iron, lit his wooden club with Hestia's blessing, and smashed the club against it with all his strength. In his defense, he just wanted to experience what it was like to be a blacksmith. It didn't go as intended. The brittle iron was smashed apart into several jagged pieces and lodged themselves into the wooden club, a club alit with the embered glow of the divine flame of Olympus. The iron fused with the wood in a way no mortal technique could accomplish, leaving a weapon unlike none other in the young prince's hand. Heracles' reaction was simple. Meh. He shrugged and walked off to show his sister the product of his failed forging experience. To the twins' surprise, the club was actually decent enough as a weapon. It could even be called a masterpiece if one considered it a mortal weapon. The wood had turned into something with enough elasticity to bounce back and deflect an impact that would have easily shattered a bronze shield, and the iron shards acted as a shock-absorbing core of sorts, which made the club hit back twice as hard in retaliation against the initial attack it received. Of course, it wouldn't fare well against weapons enchanted by the gods, and it was a far cry from a legitimate symbol of power befitting of a prince. It was still the very first weapon of his own making, and he was fond of it. It was evident in the way Heracles spent days smashing giant rocks into pebbles like a child with a new toy. As for his sister, Alcides, or Heracles as the people called her, she was a lot more mature in her way of spending time. She accompanied her brother whenever she could as if she feared a second coming of the incident that would endanger, or even worse, snuff out her brother's life. The girl thought back to that fateful day with a sigh as she watched her beloved brother's 1 millionth attempt at smashing the damn dimensional leaping phantasmal beasts people call swallows with his malformed club. The glory of Hera could remember that harrowing moment as vividly as it was yesterday. When she suddenly felt a great lapse in the mental connection she shared with her twin, she didn't know what to do. It was the first time such a thing has happened, and she was so dumbstruck that her mind went blank. She was rooted to the spot, unable to move from the terrible dread that crept up her spine. Her lungs felt as if they were clogged with miasma, and her ears were ringing. She knew something went wrong in the short time she left her brother alone. Something horribly wrong. Before she knew it, she was bounding across the crowded streets of Mycenae and onto the open rooftops, charging as fast as she could to the destination where she last felt her twin suffer a great injury. The disturbance in her twin's body and mind only meant his existence was fluctuating from some outer influence. A curse? An artifact? Or perhaps, a god? Her heart pounded wildly against her ribs as she reached her brother just in time to see him rub his neck. The glow was already diminishing, but it was enough to make out the golden words that were previously etched onto his throat. The Star of Hera. A blind rage nearly consumed her when she processed what the words meant. It was only the calm demeanor with which her brother greeted her that made her calm down and slow her charge to a trot. That was when she finally realized the woman, no, the queen which stood beside her brother with a hand on his shoulder. With her raven black hair, emerald green eyes, porcelain skin, and earrings made of peacock feathers, she was so distinguishable that it was simply impossible to mistake her identity. Alcides knelt down with her head facing toward the ground at the goddess' feet. The queen narrowed her eyes but said nothing. She pointed her chin upwards as if ordering the eyesore in front of her to speak up. Alcides obeyed. Lady Hera, I ask for your forgiveness for me to live my life with my other half in peace. For we are one, our fates intertwined. Hera looked down on her imperiously. Slowly, steadily, Hera reached out her hand and gently lifted Alcides' chin so that their eyes met. She tilted her head to the side with almost childlike innocence, as if she was observing a rare insect crawl across her turf. To squash or cherish was up to her, and both were aware of that fact. Alcides' fate was literally in her hands. Very well, the queen said after a long, stifling silence. Hera lifted one finger and pointed at Alcides. If you so wish to share your brother's fate as one, then a new name you must bear. Alcides looked straight back at the vengeful goddess, defiant and unwavering. Hera's lips curved upwards in the shape of a thin, crescent moon. Ra'alfakapalamda, glory of Hera. A great pressure seemed to set over her shoulders. The very world seemed to shiver at the name that was spoken. Oftentimes, naming is a ceremonial thing. Names carry power. Names mold a human. Names are identity. Thus, it was only natural that a name bestowed by a goddess, and a queen of Olympus nonetheless, would be both a charm and a curse. If thou art worthy, immeasurable power thy glory shall bring. It would do you well to remember the significance of this act. From here on out, thou shalt bring glory to the path which the star lights up, in my name only. Alcides dipped her head in her kneeling position. Of course, Lady Hera. Someone coughed awkwardly. Both Hera and Alcides looked at the source. Iphicles, or the newly named Heracles, scratched his head with a sheepish smile. All good are we? One big family? Friendship for the win. The incredulous look both women shot at him was enough to make him sweat profusely. He lifted up a finger, ready to preach another peculiar quote of his when he suddenly scrunched up his nose and sneezed. Repeatedly. PFT. Both of the twins' heads suffered a mild whiplash as they whirled their heads toward Hera, unable to believe what just happened. Did the stern and stoic queen just? In a pillar of golden light and a blinding flash, the queen disappeared, leaving them to wonder if what they heard was actually real. On the day of the rescue. This morning started ordinarily enough. I woke up beside my sister, brushed my teeth with some mysterious herbs, chewed on Chios mastica, mastic gum, the world's oldest chewing gum, helps your breath stay as refreshing as the forest wind and your teeth as white as purified salt, and danced for the gods. A morning routine of my daily life. Until that is, our dear father and king of Mycenae sent a messenger to deliver us shit news. The king's spies had found the illegal group of slave traders and drug dealers that was plaguing the slum districts recently, and our dear father wanted to make us prove our worth to the people by single-handedly wiping out the entire gang. To be fair, it wasn't neglect on his part that he ordered us on this mission, but an objective analysis of our current strength, which was at least 100 men. The gang had a mercenary group, but that was just about it. It was an easy job with no risks of dying, especially if Heracles was by my side. Normally, I would be shaking in my boots since this was a typical flag that read, "Shit's about to go down," which would then irrevocably lead to an apocalyptic event, knowing my rotten luck. However, this time, I was rather optimistic. Our father had done a thorough research of the gang's underground ring where most of the kingpins would assemble, and he was taking no chances since he was risking his kingdom's future, aka his son blessed by Hera. We knew where the gang was hiding, when they will assemble, and how many guards were at which exit. All in all, we were confident that this would be a walk in the park. And to their credit, and my relief, we were right. We breezed through the first level, with Alcides and I smashing the guards unconscious before they could raise an alarm. We met no resistance whatsoever as I sneaked to the door leading to the speculators' seats above the ring, with Heracles in the corridor as a backup. Our original plan was to announce my presence, break a few legs if they weren't cooperative, and send in Heracles if they had some monstrous ace in the hole soldier. In other words, we were to bring them in alive if possible. That thought flew out of my mind and beyond the fucking stratosphere when I saw with my own two eyes what they were doing. I knew as knowledge what shit they were up to. Illegal slaves, illegal fights, illegal poaching, rape, extortion, murder, drugs, all of the above and beyond. The usual mafia stuff. It was completely different seeing it in person. Two young girls no older than 10, pitted against each other in a death fight, with one being raped and the other being drugged. Somewhere, deep inside, I felt that sight looked familiar. A flash of memory. A headache. War. Gunshots, bombs, smoke, decay. Somewhere deep down, I felt something snap. I stepped forward and into the seats. I felt lightheaded. My rage was so great that it went over the top and became an icy cold tundra. I was so furious that I reached a zen-like state of pseudo-enlightenment. Those trash needed to die. No use for them after I extracted all the information. We have enough undercover agents. Something hot coursed through my mind as if a liquid fire was inserted into my neural pathway. I opened my mouth. Stop. Right. Now. I didn't know what happened. I didn't care. What I did know was that they must obey me. The ground cracked under my feet. I jumped. The screams of the pig had long since died down. The remains of the greasy mongrel lay on the floor in a hump of quivering flesh. A girl stood over it, her face twisted in an immoral expression of pure ecstasy. Her white skin was slightly pink from exertion, and her eyes were glazed over in pleasure. On second thoughts, maybe I really shouldn't have allowed the girl, Sky, to torture the pig to her heart's content. She may or may have not opened a few doors of her sexuality, and I was not prepared to go down that rabbit hole. Though damn does she look sultry in her age. Bad. Horny bach. She's a child rape victim. As if sensing my thoughts, she sent a glance filled with passion toward me and smiled seductively. Was that desire I see in her eyes? Did she just leer at me? I mean, yes, I know this world is barbaric, and child marriage is not frowned upon in this age, though still. Sky walked over to me, step by step. I couldn't help but notice how her long white legs showed from her short and tattered chiton, Greek clothes, how her blossoming breasts could be glimpsed from the confines of her cloth, and how she never broke eye contact with me as she neared. Unknowingly, I took a step back. Heracles was staring at us with an intensity that rivaled the giant serpent of Hera. I gulped nervously. Sky raised a single finger and pointed at my nose. You, she declared. Her face was flushed red with excitement and something else. Me? I asked back timidly. Sky nodded. What followed next made time stop. Become my mate. Author note. Barbaric Celtic/Greek style marriage proposal. Poor Heracles. Poor Heracles, getting NTR'd at such a young age, not. That joke about dimensional leaping swallows is a meme about Kojuru Sasaki. It's actually speculated that the swallow's Kojuru sliced was an incarnation of an old Japanese spirit. I mean, hey, a sword art that is borderline true magic to kill a bird? WDF. Review for the wholesomeness and Greek Karitsuga style infiltration. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 9, Forgiveness Leads to Sisterhood. Author note. This chapter contains equal amounts of seriousness and comedy. Be ready for a roller coaster of emotions. And yeah, Sky is going to join Chiron's lovely school for talented young heroes a few chapters from this one. Maybe. And a certain baby speedster with a heel issue. Wink wink. Chapter 9, Forgiveness Leads to Sisterhood. I'm proud to say that I'm a man with priorities. In other words, I had a good excuse, and I'm abusing the hell out of it to buy some much-needed time. The time needed to put off child porn. Sexual misconduct from a minor? A million little Heracleses in my head slammed their own heads against the round table while the other million descended into an all-out brawl which then escalated into a gladiator battle royal tournament. A giant sign was raised in my brain assembly which read, "Meeting adjourned." Screams could be heard throughout my cerebrum, to my cerebral cortex, and out of my skull. Mayday, mayday, jump the fuck off the fucking ship before she fucking sails. Yes to Lolita, no to touching. The conclusion was solidified. Nope. Huh. Sky blinked. She looked utterly bewildered as if she couldn't comprehend the fact that a fertile male with a functioning reproductive organ would let go of a chance of, in crude words, getting a free fuck. If I were a hormonal, hot-blooded, and precocious demigod with ancient Greek standards, she would have been absolutely right. Unfortunately for her, I had a healthy sense of self-preservation, modern ethics, and self-restraint. There was no way in hell I was going to go all horny brain-dead teenager mode on a child rape victim. Heracles nodded with a relieved smile and sheathed her sword. Wait, why did she unsheath it in the first place? And did she point the sword tip at Sky? Anyway, it wouldn't do to hurt her feelings. Let's use the ancient words of a wise man. The friend approach. Let's start from being friends. Besides, we have another girl to take care of. I pointed my chin to the green-haired girl Heracles had picked up in a bridal carry. Tears still stained the girl's skin as she sniffled in her sleep. Sky's pout morphed into a solemn blank mask. She sighed. You were right, except, this is something I need to take care of. A few hours later found myself and my new acquaintances behind closed doors inside the medical temple of Apollo. Let me go. Let me bite her head off. Sky stood before the girl who was tied to the bed with blankets and ropes. The girl managed to bend forwards in a surprising burst of brute strength with a crazed snarl, despite the multiple restraints around her torso and limbs. The girl bit into Sky's arm like a feral beast and jerked her head back and forth as if trying to tear the chunk of flesh off the bones. Her sharp canines pierced through Sky's skin. Red blood started to trickle down her arm and onto the floor. Sky did not try to pry the rabid girl off of her arm in panic. In fact, she did not even wince or grimace from the intense pain she must have been feeling. I closed my eyes once and sighed. I had a feeling it would turn out like this. I had respected Sky's wishes to let her deal with the girl whose mother bear she had killed, though she thought he would stand back and let the other girl tear a chunk out of her arm in her misguided attempt of atonement. She had another thing coming. After all, self-sacrificial acts are the worst kind of redemption. Sky, is your idea of handling this girl letting her bite a chunk out of your arm and making her a cannibal? Sky glared at me. I calmly stared back at her, my face as blank as a clean slate. After a few seconds, Sky lowered her gaze and bit her lip. I sighed. I snapped my fingers, which generated amplified sound waves right beside the ears of the frenzied girl, successfully catching her attention. A small trick I learned from my palace mage that uses mana reinforcement. What is your name, you who carry the sin of Lady Artemis? The name of her, supposedly, patron goddess seemed to bring her sanity back to her. The girl blinked a few times and let go of Sky's bloodied arm. At Atlanta. I. Her pupils dilated. They took the cubs hostage. They made me drink something, my mother. An ugly snarl emerged as her attention refocused on Sky. That girl killed my mother. She slew her. Sky stood like a statue carved out of marble. She said nothing to defend herself. She just nodded in affirmation. Before Atlanta could continue with her verbal assault, Heracles stepped forward and smacked Sky on the head. I nodded my thanks to my sister. She smirked back. Sky stood back up from her crouched position on wobbly legs, her eyes slightly moist from the pain. What was that for? She shouted. My sister and I raised an eyebrow. For being a damn idiot, we answered as one. When Sky still looked reasonably peeved, I elaborated. Do you think that it is the best option to receive all the scorn like some goddamn martyr? Do you think that it'll actually solve the root of the problem at hand? Do you think that it'll help you and Atlanta if you let her do what she wanted to do? I stabbed a finger into her chest before she could object and continued on. What you are trying to do is nothing but an act of self-satisfaction. It is the narcissism inside of you that is tricking you into thinking that you've done justice at the price of your well-being. Letting her hurt you while you only protected yourself in self-defense is not a valid option. If you truly want to repent, you should talk with her and explain. Sky looked downwards with a scowl. Her hands balled into fists. I sighed again and relented a little. Of course, what you do is, ultimately, up to you. Only you can choose your life. I'm merely providing my opinion and an alternative path. Whether you choose to tread that path or look the other way is, in the end, up to you. Sky was silent for a few seconds. Then, she raised her head up. The hesitance and doubts that were previously within had disappeared, and in its place, there was a clear conviction, one as transparent as spring water. She walked over to the green-haired girl, and Sucker punched her in the face. I felt as if my eyes would bulge out of my sockets. Heracles slapped her face with a groan. What? I persuaded her to talk, didn't I? Or, does talking in ancient Greece involve fists? Sky was far from finished. She pointed right at the place between Atlanta's brows, making the girl's eyes swivel inwards. It was a comedic sight if it didn't just involve a punch to a restricted drug patient with PTSD. I am terribly sorry for your mother bear's loss, and you have my deepest condolences. However, Sky thumped her chest. I accidentally slayed your mother in self-defense, and it was by her will that I'm still alive. Your mother sacrificed herself, for it was the only way. You were drugged and held captive as a hostage. I was forced to fight beasts lest my neck is electrocuted off my shoulders. It was her or me. And your mother chose me. It was as if Sky had suddenly let loose of everything that was weighing on her chest. Atlanta was frozen, wide-eyed, and thoroughly stunned by the reveal. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Finally, Atlanta let out a choking, wrenching sound that was like a sob. What am I supposed to hate? The culprits, you killed them, did you not? I smell their blood on your hands. Atlanta squeezed her eyes shut as tears gushed out from her closed eyelids. Her face scrunched into one who had experienced deep loss. Her entire body trembled. What am I to hate if you are not to blame? What am I to do with this pain, this ire towards you? Tell me. Her outburst held great agony, and it slammed into Sky's gut like Atlas fists. For one rare moment, Sky was completely speechless and at a loss of what to do. I felt her pain. I truly did. It squeezed and twisted my heart. It was excruciating. I don't know why, but I sympathized with Atlanta more than I could have with my life devoid of tragic deaths. I stepped forward and hugged Atlanta. Words flowed out of my mouth without any thought. Good. Admit that you hate Sky while she is also a victim of unfortunate circumstances. Admit that you hate her regardless. Atlanta's face of pure, unadulterated bewilderment was adorable. I rubbed her cheek and prompted her to look into my eyes. Splendid, at least that was enough to shock her out of her tantrum. I chuckled and explained myself. Believe it or not, the fact that you feel intense hate regardless of the situation is actually a healthy reaction. You're letting loose of all your pent-up frustrations. However, hate is a destructive tool that hurts others as well as yourself. It's unwise to rely upon it as a crutch. Atlanta furrowed her brows. Then, why did you say it was a good thing that I hate Sky? I smiled warmly. She was using Sky's name. She was adapting. I'm not telling you to not feel hate. I'm telling you to learn to temper it. Hate and love are actually very similar. The opposite of affection is not contempt, but indifference. I'm asking you to not be indifferent to another's thoughts. I massaged her scalp to ease the tension in her muscles. She leaned into my hand. Another good sign. She was listening. I continued, deciding to beat the iron when it was hot. Take revenge as an example. Let's say you want to kill Sky no matter what. What would happen if you stay indifferent to her perspective and believe your vengeance is in the right? You would discard her opinions as meaningless rabble. You would be more prone to hate, for we hate what is different from us. We hate what we don't understand. What would happen if you give in to your hate and contempt? What if you lose yourself to your anger and justify all your acts of violence? Did it ever occur to you that she may have a family? What will stop you from dooming the few innocents in your way as a necessary sacrifice? One thing will lead to another, and soon enough, The accumulation of your deeds will come snowballing down the steep slope like an avalanche. As they say, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Thus, you condemn the innocents that shall suffer for your folly and worthless grudge. Self-righteousness? Your sense of justice? All of that doesn't mean shit if it causes misfortune for the general populace. That's why it is so important to try to stand in another's shoes. Ask yourself once more from Sky's perspective, and look into your conscience deep within. Is Sky the one to blame for your mother's death? Do you still find her as something your hate can latch on to? I stopped. I had put everything I wanted to teach her into my words. I wanted to convince her that the direction of her hate and her hate itself is misplaced and could be transformed into something much more beneficial. If there is one truth I know deep down, it is this. Change the perspective and the world shall change with it. Kill one man single-handedly on the street and you're a murderer. Kill 100 men single-handedly on the battlefield and you are a hero. Kill 1,000 and you are a god. Or if you were standing on the opposite side, you would be considered a demon. Everything is about perspective. I just hoped that Atlanta would find some wisdom in my words, no matter how minuscule it may be. To my relief, Atlanta shook her head in denial. She looked more lost than she ever was. It was time to nail it in. Her direction. What is your hate then? Atlanta blinked. My question was so out of the blue that it had caught her unawares. She thought for a moment, then answered. My hate is anger. Rage. Fury at the injustice I suffered at the hands of those inhuman scum. I want to crush them. Eradicate their kind. I know what you're trying to say. I'm not aiming for a life of revenge. I let out my breath. For one terrifying second, I thought she chose her life as an avenger. She continued. I want to make sure scum like those may never reproduce. I'm going to crush their testicles and the worm that is stuck with it. What? She blinked and repeated with a serious face. I'm going to make their dick and balls into meat paste. Okay. Yeah, why not? Go, girl. Do your thing. Yes, I'm done. I've stopped the negative spiral of revenge. The only price is some transgender operations free of charge. Yeah, I'm all for it. World peace is near. Hallelujah. Why does Sky look so fucking aroused? Atlanta seemed to notice Sky's queer behavior. She narrowed her eyes. I cheered inwardly. Yes, Atlanta. Tell her off. They wordlessly shook hands as if they were comrades who survived 2 world wars. Yeah, I knew it. Friendship is invincible. Yay. Wait. Did she just untie herself when I was busy preaching love, forgiveness, and brotherhood? God fucking damn it all to Maria's glory hole. I felt someone drill a hole in the back of my head with their eyes. I raised my head to meet Sky's scrutinizing gaze. Sky seemed to be regarding me in a whole new light. You are one scary, charismatic, and manipulative man. I want to tie you so hard right now. You have the fucking worst turn-ons ever. Author note. Poor Heracles, what did you do? You've made the worst sisterhood for mankind's genitals. The family jewel shall go extinct. LOI will cry. GIA will. Actually, GIA might be pleased. LOL. Now I have a female version of the first Hassan's cult which specializes in Azraelian G-male crotches inside my head. Damn it. Review for my continued existence and Heracles' poor mental health. Review anyway. Oh, the horny doggos who suggested child fucking can answer the FBI at your door. Or the police. Or the PDA. Or a fully charged X-kalibuuuur. Your choice. Oh, no need to answer this. It's rhetorical and they're all at your doorstep anyway. Good luck. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 10, Twin Stars Meet. Author note. Why was Atlanta capable of speech when she was brought up by bears? Artemis nanomachines, girl. Yeah, I couldn't imagine her as a bear girl who walks on 4 legs. I mean, hey, it's Artemis Bear, and Atlanta was kinda under her protection, and she was aware of that fact from a young age, FGO material. Anyways, onto some new encounters and plot lines. P.S. A little Easter egg in the first section of this chap. Maybe if you would get it, LOL. Twin stars meet. Somewhere far, in the future. In a meadow filled with spring flowers, a young girl clad in white armor lovingly traced her finger over the black leather cover of her book. Her hair had a golden shine of fresh wheat, and her eyes emerald green, sparkling with hope and untainted dreams. For the 100th time, the girl opened the book and started to read her favorite page. A passage that she shall cherish for her entire life. Hope for a brighter future. To hope is to pursue harmony within your desires. The flow of Gaia is not one to be fought against, but to be in harmony with. To love is to understand. From that stems compromise. Humanity is still too young, too immature. Its comprehension is still too feeble to withstand the grandiose nature of the world. A man is only a man. Unless humanity stands as one individual could only try to adapt. Even several thousand years from now, their primitive nature might still remain unchanged. Even when gods fall, mystic fades, and humanity rules over the planet, humans shall still fight, kill, pillage, and disgrace. Either among themselves or for something else, always a slave to their own selfish purposes. However, he still hopes that one day, maybe one day, humanity might learn to stand as one. That one day, instead of blood and hatred, there shall be smiles and love. That one day, the world would become a better place. Bear the responsibility. Drink in the humiliation. Bask in the pain. Be the star that outshines the darkest of nights. Become the beacon of hope in the midst of despair. Then, walk forwards once more. Again and again and again. For a fate eternal. Records of Heracles, page 777, from the treasury of the British royal family. The words of her ancestor, Heracles. Tragic hero of Hera, twin of Heracles, champion of Pharonous, husband of Pollux, sworn brother of Castor, lord of Sky, and crown prince of Mycenae. Also a rumored descendant of Gilgamesh the Golden, who himself claimed that he carried the blood of Helmius the heroic, divine ancestor of Pharonous the first king. The Babylonian king claimed that the sword of rapture he wielded was proof of his lineage, and this very sword was excavated by Heracles from an ancient underground ruin, which was later summoned by him when he was in dire need of a weapon after he lost his holy sword to an ambush. The same holy sword that she may one day wield. The sword of crystallized hope that was passed on to Heracles in the secret shrine of Pharonous. So engrossed she was in her fantasies that she didn't notice the voice calling out her name. It was her mentor, the great mage of the flowers. Taking a deep breath, she rose from the stone she was sitting on and brushed off the dust from her pristine white dress. Buckling her sword of choosing to her belt, she ran to her teacher. Today was a big day for Heracles. Today was the day that the heroes their father has called to Mycenae shall arrive. Among them were Peleus, father of Achilles and husband of the sea nymph Thetis, and the famed Dioscuri, children of Zeus, who were, according to them, the incarnation of old gods who received Zeus' blood and reverted into half-mortal demigod twins, Castor and Pollux. He and Heracles stood near the palace doors, eager to welcome their mentors. After all, it wasn't every day you can call in a personal tutor that is a legit demigod, who was also once an old god. While he had no intention of asking why they became demigods of Zeus, he had a fair guess anyway. They were most likely a twin god that was one entity, one who belonged to a fallen pantheon and was forgotten by humanity, which made them regress into a spirit and was then assimilated by Zeus into the Greek pantheon. He was still very much interested in their abilities. He knew from his fragmented knowledge that they were regarded as helpers of humankind and held to be patrons of sailors in particular, to whom they appeared as St. Elmo's fire. He also knew that their role as horsemen and boxers made them the patrons of athletes and that they intervened in moments of crisis to aid those who honored them. However, it was always different to see the real deal. Thus, it was only natural that Heracles excitedly jumped down the steps leading to the palace door when he sensed a chariot with divinity on it. Heracles quickly followed his lead and landed half a step before her brother, as if to shield him if anything goes out of hand. The outside of the chariot was embroidered with enchanted bronze and was led by two white horses with small wings, Pegasus offsprings. While they were inferior to the Pegasus since they were half-bloods, they were still exceedingly rare and nigh impossible to find in the wild. A man and a woman were on the chariot, both identical in terms of demeanor and appearance. They were both blonde and had electric blue eyes, and were clad in black skin-tight armor with a white chiton covering it. His eyes met theirs, and an electric tremor passed through their spines. They immediately knew who the other was. The demigod twins leaped down from their chariot and onto the ground a few feet before them. Heracles and his sister lightly bowed with a smile, and the Dioscuri nodded back in return. All of them instinctively knew that this encounter would most likely shape their future and were rather cautious in their approach. A pleasure to meet you, O guiding stars of man. Even the sun is unable to outshine your splendor, is it not? All except one idiotic boy, it seemed. In all honesty, I thought about using the red carpet approach when I first heard that the Dioscuri was coming. I mean, those guys claimed that they were literally gods of an old pantheon. Not that a lot of people believed in their claim, though I deduced that their story had at least some truth in it. After all, I knew for a fact from my splintered knowledge that the Dioscuri were the divine manifestation of the stars that light up the night skies after a passing storm and were worshipped by people, later known as the constellation Gemini. Nonetheless, I decided against my initial approach, for it may be taken as a job or even an insult to the fact that they were no longer gods. Instead, I chose to show my sincerity by waiting for them at the palace's doorstep. I craned my neck and focused beyond the horizon with the eagle vision of Artemis. A tiny flash of bronze reflected the sunlight, like a star under the sun. Dust clouds trailed behind the bronze as it speeded in the direction of Mycenae. The divinity the chariot carried could be sensed from a mile away. Indeed, they were no ordinary demigods, if they could be called one in the first place. The chariot drew nearer and finally stopped a few feet before the palace steps where we stood. The Pegasus offsprings neighed and pawed the ground, flapping their small wings on their backs in an attempt to cool themselves down. I signaled to one of the guards positioned nearby and made him carry over the things I had prepared beforehand, while I greeted our new mentors with open arms. A pleasure to meet you, O guiding stars of man. Even the sun is unable to outshine your splendor, is it not? I said cheerfully with a sweeping bow, with my sister following behind with a small bow of her own. My name is Heracles, and my former name is Iphicles. I shall be in your care, I added with a thump to my chest. The Dioscuri raised their eyebrows as one, seemingly perplexed that a mortal acknowledged their origin before they introduced themselves, but suddenly widened their eyes when they noticed the meaning of my name. They nodded. The young man, Castor, spoke up first. prized daughter of Zeus, and the blessed boy of Hera, the artificial star of Olympus. I greet you as well, and Castor glanced at the guards who were busy placing buckets of cold water and chopped fruit mixed with fresh vegetables in front of their mouths. I appreciate your hospitality. I smiled my best megawatt smile at him. No problem. My sister, Heracles, shall lead your Pegasus offsprings to the palace stables. Castor nodded and stepped forward. He seemed to trust me more with my show of respect and welcome. Thank you. I will personally settle them down. They tend to make a fuss in unknown environments and harass other horses. With those words, the stoic man waved his hand at his horses and followed Heracles to the stables. I was left with Pollux, and it was then that my anxiety started to kick in. She was observing me in an almost emotionless way, as if she was dissecting me with her eyes alone. Lady Pollux? Is there anything I can do to help you? Pollux blinked at my words. Her long golden eyelashes fluttered before her piercing, brilliant azure eyes. She shook her head and giggled. I've made you uncomfortable, haven't I? It is just exceedingly rare for someone to actually recognize us as gods of the old. A lot keep silent in respect for our status as demigods of Zeus, though seldom do they accept us as we are. She had dimples when she laughed. It was so cute, it was hard to believe that she was unparalleled in boxing and sword art. The way she stared at me made me realize that I'd messed up. I felt my cheeks heat up. I must be blushing so hard right now. Why am I suddenly acting like a brain-dead moron? I said that aloud, didn't I? Pollux grinned at me in the exact same way an adult would tease a toddler. At the very least, she seemed to take no offense from my words, rather finding them adorable. How about I show you an interesting trick? When she saw how hesitant I was, she laughed out loud. Her voice was like glass bells, refined, elegant, and pleasing to the ear. I won't bite. I won't hurt you either. Now, if you would kindly join me in a short boxing spar, my prince. Pollux tilted her head coyly to the side. I blushed again. I swear to the gods above that she's having a field day teasing me. She would be the death of me. I couldn't figure out if the palpitation in my heart was the symptom of a cardiac arrest due to fear or arousal. Pollux laughed again in that delightful voice, and I realized that I'd fucked up once more. Shit. Eager to end my embarrassment, I took a stance and raised both of my fists in the traditional Greek boxing style. Are you ready, little star? The way Pollux said my name caught me off guard once more, though I managed to rein myself in. I don't know why I was reduced to a nervous mess in her presence. It couldn't be that. Now, focus. I'm ready, dash. Pollux stepped inside my striking zone. I couldn't react. Not at all. It wasn't that she was inhumanly fast. It was as if she weaved through the tiny blank space in my consciousness and capitalized on the minuscule lapse in my concentration. She was just there. Her footwork was also queer, as she seemed to disappear into my blind spot before my eyes caught up, in the same manner a small insect slips through one's gaze. When I tried to raise my guard, it was already too late. Her fist caught me in the chin. Her knuckles gently bumped against my jaw. It was tender and harmless, yet it struck with deadly effectiveness. Before I knew it, I was already on the ground. The scenery around me seemed to blur and blend at its fringes. Small white and black dots flickered across my field of vision. A concussion, my brain told me. A white hand stuck out. I grasped Pollux's hand like a drowning man who found a piece of rope. She hauled me up with surprising strength. Still swaying on my feet, I stumbled forwards. My head was burrowed into something soft and warm. I wrapped my hands around something equally soft and feminine to steady myself. I blinked. Then, reality hit me. I am sorry. Stammering, I tried to pull back, only for Pollux's hand to pat my head reassuringly. Rest, child. I'm not so easily offended. But dash. Our conversation was cut with two thuds. We looked toward the source of the sound. A few yards away, our siblings stood motionlessly. Two saddles were on the ground, discarded and forgotten. Simultaneously, Castor and Heracles raised a quivering finger and pointed accusingly at us. Let my sister/brother go this instant, you thought/harlot. I and Pollux rolled our eyes and sighed as one. Omake, Chaldea-style bond level. Scathach, bond level 3/15, 33% till next level. Atlanta, bond level 2/15, 20% till next level. Pollux, bond level 1/15, 50% till next level. Castor, bond level -1/15, temporary debuff, -2 levels. Chiron, bond level 0/15. Amphitryon, Daddy King bond level April 15th, -1% with every hairline joke. Alcmene, Mommy Queen bond level 3/15, -2 bond levels due to proximity with Heracles. Heracles, bond level 10/15, 20% till next level. Hera, Sugar Mommy bond level 7 out of 15, 70% till next level. Other Olympians, average bond level 2/15. My plans for our star's future relationship in terms of Charitzigu, Pollux equals Iliasviel, Scathach equals Mia. So, Scathach is a bodyguard/mistress/loyal dog/BFFL kind of position? Need more character development to get there. Pollux thinks of our BOI as a little child. I mean, hey, she was a god. As for Castor and Heracles, Why do I think those two would make a hilarious pair? Next is the primary training arc in one chapter. Wait for Chiron Sensei for advanced courses. Review and review again for the twin stars meeting the artificial star. Review whatever. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 11, Rising Shine. Author note. Rewritten this chapter, again, since it was a little too repetitive in a training montage kind of way, as well as several others concerning the MC's past life, etc. Chapter 4 was still confusing. Thank myself for the fucking convoluted plot. LOL. Also, I wanted to clear this misunderstanding. Both Scathach and Pollux for the love interest position, not exactly the conventional monogamy, but meh. I'm not planning to expand. As I've said earlier, 2 heroines at most. Oh, our BOI is so gonna get screwed, in a non-sexual way, by his sugar mommy. Chapter 11, Rising Shine. A record about a white-robed mentor teaching his student and future liege. Names have a prominent meaning. Its significance is well known not only in terms of identity but also as the foundations of a particular existence, much like an origin. In Heracles' case, his name represents him as a star akin to a divine construct made by Hera. In other words, mortal and artificial. On the other hand, the Gemini is the twin star of guidance. Those who light the path the mortals shall tread upon. A divine entity through and through. Children of Zeus they may be due to the assimilation of the Greek pantheon, they were still the Gemini. While similar, the Dioscuri and Heracles couldn't be more different, like opposite sides of the same coin. Thus, it was only natural that Heracles was attracted to the female counterpart of Gemini, the side which represents the feminine and puts emphasis on compassion and benevolence. What? Would it be cheating with how intimate he was rumored to be with the Queen of Sky? Ah, young Artoria, so innocent and pure. There is a lot more between man and woman that exceeds the simple conduct of marriage. You can have a friend with benefits, a comrade with mutual interests. Beneficial cooperation comes in many different forms, you see. Besides, the legend states that the 2 women were very close. Just how it should be. 2 lilies in harmony. I approve. I, for one. OW. Don't you dare bite me down there. What? Stop, Cathpalig, you ungrateful little white. OW. Merlin's teaching of Camelot, recorded by Sir Kay and King Arthur. Okay, calm down. Deep breaths. Stay cool. Focus. Breathe in, breathe out. HIYDAH. The 10-year-old boy gripped his modified short spear with a loud battle cry and leaped down towards certain death. One could see tears of denial still moistening his eyes, his body shaking uncontrollably from fear and apprehension. What can make a young boy that terrified? Well, to be honest, a lot of things. Among them was one of the twin stars that were once gods of the old that has been long forgotten and incorporated into Zeus' own mythology via his blood. They were called the Dioscuri, meaning children of Zeus, a brother and a sister that were deprived of their divinity, later blessed by the king of Olympus. The brother was an exceptionally skilled chariot fighter / discobolus, discus thrower, while his sister was an immortal pancration / sword master of unparalleled martial prowess. To make matters even worse, both had an unquenchable thirst for sparring. And as if that wasn't enough to drive the young hero to a mental breakdown, there was also a very sadistic Peleus who would grapple him within half an inch of his life if he tried to so much as run away. It was in those times that Heracles had to admit that Peleus was capable enough to catch Thetis and win her heart by, quite literally, keeping his hold on her as she tried to slip away by transforming into various animals. It was pretty metal for a marriage proposition, even by Greek standards. He didn't know if he should pity or congratulate Achilles for this insane "this is how I met your mother" story. Every single one of his trainers was a living nightmare for the young hero. Every single one of those divine bastards could very well knock the living shit out of him with a light bump of their fists. It doesn't matter what the weapon is. They were equally deadly. Very deadly. The boy could personally attest to that. Anyways, despite the boy's worst fears, gravity worked as it was intended. This meant he fell straight down, spear brandished, and right into the welcoming arms of Pollux. Overextended it may be, his spear still carried his entire momentum. Under normal circumstances, it would have spelled death for the person on the receiving end via a spear gutting you through the stomach like a fish. Alas, Pollux was anything but normal. Clang. A small flick of her wrist was all it took for her to swiftly deflect the boy's suicidal attempt at mimicking a flailing monkey. As a matter of fact, not only was Heracles' spear effortlessly parried away, the brutal twist of the demigod's sword completely nullified the entire force behind the boy's strike. All in but one single fluid movement. In a brilliant flurry of sparks, the pole of bronze spun through the air like a helicopter and clattered somewhere out of his sight. His young body was then effortlessly captured in what seemed like a motherly embrace. He knew better. Ah shit. Here I go again. Pollux smiled sweetly at the soon-to-be-sacrificed lamb in her death hold. You never learn, do you? Heracles' world turned upside down. Quite literally, that is. How the fuck did I get myself into this deep pile of shit? He lamented. Poor Heracles. Mercy wasn't a thing in hardcore Greece. That was how the young hero in training found himself being subject to child abuse, aka being plunged headfirst into the ground below. Or in his case, from above. Luckily for him, he didn't need to suffer the suffocation of worm-infested mud or the groundbreaking sensation that impacted his fragile skull. For in the very instant his head made contact with the layer of hardened mud, his lights went out. In the last moments of his fleeting consciousness, he heard a strange voice shout out from a shard of his bizarre memories. A narration about someone named Luviagelida Edelfelt. There she goes at Rintosaka. Watch out, watch out, watch out. Oh, could that be it? Ladies and gentlemen, here we have the Edelfelt's mightiest martial technique. German suplex, Greek edition aka Greeks were first, bitch. Pancration is eternal. What the fuck is my past life? Heracles fainted. Heracles' diabolic training regime was infamous. It was already an amusement source for the common folk at this point. Grueling was too soft a word for it to phrase how utterly cruel his torture was. In the morning, he rode the chariot while dodging the projectiles Castro and Peleus randomly threw at him, with Sky by his side in case he was knocked out of the chariot, which happened quite a lot. Heracles? She did all this blindfolded with an excited Atalanta jumping by her side. In the afternoon, he sparred with Pollux and occasionally Castor, until he was beaten an inch of his life, while Sky fought Peleus with battle-frenzied glee. Heracles? She fought both of the Dioscuri. In the evenings, he was allowed some free time of his own. He exchanged theories on martial arts with his sister or played with Atalanta and Sky in the ancient arts of hide and seek. Tired? Exhausted? Broken bones? Torn muscles? Concussions? Dehydration? Fatigue? The Athena-branded caffeine/brain power kicks in. Then, his servants will stuff his mouth with food and wine and let the blessings of Demeter and Dionysus do the rest. The next day, the prince would wake anew, ready for the torture that shall soon torment his soul. Thus, the cycle repeats. What about the mighty Heracles? She always completed her training long before her idiot brother and was responsible for taking care of him after training. It was said that it was her favorite private time. You know what? The training sucked like Zeus balls. On second thought, that made me nauseous. Scratch that. I need my bleach. Ugh. The only good thing that happened was that independent training gradually changed into team training, something to do with collaboration and teamwork which you kids do not have, by Peleus. Screw that sly bastard. Sky joined as a candidate for his future royal guard, while Atalanta started her training as a palace hunter with the men of Mycenae. The spars were simple in terms of rules. I teamed up with Sky and Heracles against the Dioscuri and Peleus, and anyone who was incapacitated or unable to continue fighting was considered the loser along with the team the one belonged to. I told Sky to act as if she was right-handed. Why? Mwahahaha, those smug bitches would never see this coming, fufufu. All according to my Grand Kikaku. As he foresaw, Dioscuri acted as a well-oiled machine, and while he and Heracles were able to stall their assault, Peleus managed to unarm Sky by parrying the tip of her spear with his own and grappled her to the ground, subduing her. Sky started to train in all sorts of unorthodox ways of spear fighting as well as hand-to-hand combat after her defeat, and Heracles and Heracles began creating a fighting style of their own similar to the Dioscuri. The time was nigh. More than a year had passed under the torture, training of my esteemed mentors. We were reaching the end of our training, and I just knew it. I am a new man, a man with confidence and experience to match it. I could almost taste the scent of Lady Nikos' victory in the air, beckoning me ever so sweetly. Ahem. No, I'm not a pervert with a smell fetish, you horny mops. I'll bite you. Anyways, while we still couldn't win in a one-on-one combat against the Dioscuri since we were inexperienced and still young, we were putting up close fights, and victory was only a matter of time. To this day, I focused on tactical retreats/defeats to measure and gauge the weaknesses and strengths of the opposing teams while hiding our own strengths. Not anymore. Today, I say goodbye to my weakest getting manhandled by sick Greek bastards. Today, I shall prevail. Today, we will win. I and Heracles acted as a distraction. And by distraction, I meant the classic one. The one as old as time. We charged. We charged Peleus head first, and the man, shocked by the sudden brazenness and our change in strategy, quickly backpedaled. The Dioscuri immediately intervened, and it seemed as if Sky would engage Peleus. Emphasis on seemed. Sky was nowhere in sight. Peleus must have thought it was a decoy tactic, as he wisely stood still and readied his spear. And not a second too sooner. Darting across with her body parallel to the ground like a feline beast, a technique she learned from Atalanta, Sky's spear thrust upwards from the shadows cast by the trees nearby. Peleus managed to dodge her first strike and met her flurry of continuous strikes with his own. Seeing that he was reaching a stalemate due to the rapid improvement of Sky's spear arts, he sought to exploit the opening in which Sky changed her thrust pattern, a weakness that allowed him to disarm her strike multiple times. As expected, Sky was ready for him this time and dropped her spear in the midst of a feint thrust, one which Peleus had tried to parry, and caught it in her left hand. With a twist of her wrist, the spear bent up like a rising viper and dug its tip between Peleus' ribcage. A blunted tip it may be, the spear was enough to knock the air out of his lungs and sink him to his knees. The man dropped his spear, and Sky caught its pommel on the tip of her toes and kicked it up into the air. What followed was the most graceful move I've ever seen. Her body seemed to grow wings as she somersaulted through the sky in one clean flip, kicking downwards on the spear's pommel at the height of her jump, while still upside down. It was unheard of to kick a spear midair, much less in the midst of a somersault, and thus, the Dioscuri was thoroughly unprepared for her trick. The spear soared through the air, knocked Pollux' sword sideways, ricocheted off, and buried itself in the back of Castor's knee. All in one fluid motion. I motioned to Heracles, and we instantly switched opponents while they were still shaken, me to Castor and her to Pollux, and swiftly took them down with a stab to their abdomen. There was a long silence before a clapping sound echoed across the plains. I never knew Sky was ambidextrous and had a spear-kicking fetish, Peleus said with a giant grin. He opened his arms. Congratulations, kids. You have finished your dam training. We cheered. 2 years have passed since Heracles' rescue of Sky and Atalanta. The twins had turned 15, while Sky and Atalanta had turned 12. In that rather short span of time, a lot happened. One of them was that the mischievous prince and his loyal sister were no longer called by the names of their youth, Iphicles and Alcides. Their true name and the legend that he bore with it were introduced to the common folk via the priestesses of Hera. Heracles, the shining star of Hera, the beacon of the queen, and Heracles, the glory of Hera, she who makes the stars shine. It was uncommon for even the most blessed of demigods to make a legend for themselves so quickly in life. Yet, despite the crippling odds, a young twin of 7 had managed to strike a deal with the Queen of Olympus herself. Not only were they granted an audience, but one of them, a mere mortal, was also granted her flesh and ichor. Prompted by the king of Mycenae's call for tutors, men and women aspiring to be heroes raised their heads, their interest piqued, as they themselves sought to meet the twins in person. Among them were heroes such as Peleus, husband to the sea nymph Thetis, and soon-to-be father of Achilles. There were also some that were immortal. For one, the stars of Zeus heard of a newborn star and found their way to Mycenae under the guidance of the queen herself. A wise centaur of Mount Pelion also sent an eagle from his secluded abode, while shaking his head about how Artemis wouldn't stop pestering him, and how peacocks would fly out of nowhere, only to stand in front of his cave, menacingly. The sage got the message fairly quickly after that incident, which was why he sent an eagle off to Mycenae with an invitation tied to its leg in the first place. An uncharacteristic move on the sage's part, but he had a sense of self-preservation, after all. The king untied a letter from the eagle's leg and skimmed through its contents. Invitations sent in this manner weren't rare. As a matter of fact, it became commonplace once Hera had officially announced Heracles and Heracles as her champions. Every day, invitations would be sent to his palace like wine from the cellars. He thought that this one was no different. His brow shot up when he realized how unorthodox the invitation was. It was written by the sage of Mount Pelion, the great centaur and child of the titan Kronos, Chiron. To think that he will also invite the girls Heracles rescued, Sky and Atalanta. As expected of the sage, his clairvoyance is splendid. Amphitryon lowered the letter and sighed. He rubbed his chin, contemplating whether he should accept this unusual offer. Bah. There's no reason not to accept. A year of training under the sage would be enough. The twins and the girls are more than enough talented if what my men say is true. Besides, I heard Chiron could be especially harsh to students who were exceptional. He stood up from his throne and motioned for a messenger. He touched his receding hairline and scowled. Call the twins and the girls. They are going on a vacation to Mount Pelion. King Amphitryon's smile was vicious. It seemed that he never forgot the pranks his roguish son played on his head. A strand of hair fell onto the floor. The king snarled and smashed his fist against his throne in dismay. Author note. Peleus is basically Crow Brahmin from RWY, while the Dioscuri is a mirror of our twins. And yes, for the people who noticed, that trick Sky played on Peleus was a little foreshadowing. Next chapter, they go on their separate ways for a while. Farewell scene and all that good stuff. The twins head to Mount Pelion with the girls. I'm afraid I might not be updating for more than a week or so due to work IRL. Review to keep this alive. Review for the Spartan training. X-kalibuuuur, over and out. Chapter 12, Get Off Your High Whore. Never mind. In all honesty, I was pretty curious when we were told to go train under Chiron. I mean, not to be arrogant or anything, but we had enough training under the Dioscuri and Peleus. And they were absolutely a slave driver with a Spartan fetish deeper than the Mariana Trench. Chiron, the son of the titan Kronos and the Oceanid Philyra, and who was fostered by Apollo. The immortal sage of Mount Pelion who's said to be the wisest and justest of all centaurs. Well, since Chiron was also known for his knowledge and skill with medicine, and thus was credited with the discovery of botany and pharmacy, the science of herbs and medicine, it may have something to do with that? Are you mulling over why we were sent to Chiron? Again, Atalanta asked in a slightly exasperated tone. I chuckled, shaking my head at her innocence. Everything happens for a reason, especially when my patron is Lady Hera. Can't be too careful, even if our stay is only for a year. My sister grunted in agreement. Yes. Especially when it almost always ends up with you bleeding out at Thanatos' door. I tried to refute, only to grimace when I realized that my sister was right. I was always the one who ended up nearly dying. I wonder if the pomegranates of Uncle Hades are as juicy as they say. They say it is something to die for. He. My sister and Sky pinched my gut at the same time. Oh, what's that for? You were obviously thinking of something stupid or tempting fate, they answered at the same time. I groaned. Atlanta gave me one of her, "Are you okay, my guy?" looks. Let's just climb Mount Pelion, I muttered in defeat. The trip to Mount Pelion was surprisingly anticlimactic. A few hikes through mountain paths, a small boat ride, and we were there in a matter of a few days. Scratching my chin, I peered through the shrubbery at the cave entrance in the distance. It looked habitable enough, with furs and wooden furniture. I could see the herbs that were dry baking in the sun on straw mats near the entrance. It gave off a very unique scent that reminded me of a blend of peppermint and cinnamon. All in all, it was a lot better in hygiene than some rich houses I know. Nothing out of the usual. Better introduce ourselves to Master Chiron. My. You indeed are vigilant. Though still slightly inexperienced, if I may say so. A voice rang out from right behind our backs, making us jump. We whirled around with our weapons in hand. There he was, a young man with gentle features and light brown hair, perched atop a tree branch. His appearances matched those testimonies from people who met Chiron. I blinked. Something was not right. On a tree branch? Why does he have human legs? The man smiled mischievously at my bewildered expression. I am Chiron, the centaur you were looking for. As for why I have human legs, allow me to demonstrate. With those words, he slid off the tree branch and landed on the grass beneath him. And as his feet hit the earth, a cracking sound was heard as they started to morph. In a matter of seconds, the human legs multiplied into 4, then grew darker until they became brown and covered with short fur, as his feet hardened and became black hoofs. Always assume that rumors, especially those based on visual information, are not all that it seems, he said softly. I couldn't help but gape at what had transpired. I glanced sideways, only to see identical expressions of shock and awe on my companions' faces. Licking my dry lips, I forced myself to calm down. I mean, come on, he is born immortal. His father is the freaking king of the Titans. A little transformation must be like taking a shit for those Greek immortals. Nothing special. Thank you for your valuable insight, Master Chiron. We, Heracles and Heracles, along with Sky and Atlanta, are eager to study under your guidance. I hope we did not make you wait too long. Chiron raised an eyebrow as he studied me in newfound interest, possibly impressed by how quickly I regained my bearings. After a short while, he nodded with a warm smile. It's an honor to teach you talented young men and women. While most of my students usually start under my tutelage from a fairly young age of 11, I believe you are all exceptions. And no, you arrived faster than I anticipated. I did not wait at all. Now, come inside. You must be tired from your travels. With those words, Chiron turned around and beckoned us to follow him inside his cave. We followed him into a large room with a round table in the middle and wooden chairs surrounding it. A cauldron sat above a small fireplace as the sound of liquid bubbling filled the quiet room. He motioned for us to sit down and offered each one of us what seemed like a cup of honeyed tea. After we settled down, Chiron started talking once more. I am sure you have questions about what I am going to teach you. After all, you are all accomplished warriors or hunters in your own right. Therefore, it is my personal belief that learning about how to mentor someone about the same age as you would be most beneficial for your personal growth. I blinked. That was certainly not what I was expecting. Though, coming to think of it, it did make sense considering we were only staying for a year at most. Teaching somebody near his age, well, that certainly did not sound like a breeding ground for some hormonal teen trouble or anything. Huh. So, mental/psychological training related to emotional management? I asked. Chiron's smile widened as he nodded. That, among others. I am sure that you would all find out along the way. Chiron clapped his hands together. Now, time to introduce you to your students. One of the youngest might be someone related to a man you know well, he said mysteriously. I and my sister cocked our heads to the side. We were led outside once more, to an open grass plain near the cave. Several young boys varying from 5'14" sat on a large slab of rock that jutted out of the grass. Chiron led us towards them as both sides curiously observed the other. Chiron gestured at the boys with a sweep of his arm. Let me introduce these future heroes of Greece. From right to left, I give you Asclepius, son of Apollo, Jason, rightful future king of Thessaly, Theseus, son of Poseidon, Abdrus, son of Hermes, and Achilles, son of hero Peleus and sea goddess Thetis. Our eyes were drawn to the youngest among the boys at the name Peleus. That bastard said nothing about his son, Sky muttered under her breath. Probably didn't spend much time with him considering he was training you guys. He must be lonely, Atlanta whispered back. I glanced at Heracles, and we shared a subtle nod. Better confirm the relationship between son and father first. Achilles, while he looked no older than 5, must have noticed our peculiar reaction. Jumping down from the rock, he stomped towards us, and stopped before Atlanta, who was the nearest one among us. Ah, shit. He must have heard something. Before I could do anything to relieve whatever friction there was, Achilles lifted one chubby finger and pointed it at Atlanta's face. I challenge you to a race, you green fatty. Silence reigned. Then, come again, you little pipsqueak, Atlanta said calmly. A vein pulsated on her forehead, betraying her true feeling on the matter. Heracles sighed and rubbed my back. I hate my life. Author note. Totally inaccurate Greek lore. Chiron. A trainer with 4 hooves that takes how to train your Greek hero to a whole new level. An extreme, prepare to die sort of new level. Famous heroes such as Perseus, Theseus, and Jason were taught how to master various weapons, brew medicine, and hunt by a sadistic 4-hooved horse sage who was also a giant dick. Both metaphorically and literally. At least it wasn't Scathach. A little wink to the future relationship between Atlanta and Achilles. They really look like brother and sister together. Please review and comment. It helps. X-kalibuuuur, exhausted and out. Chapter 13, Omake 1, FGO Stats. Chaldea Records 1, summoned when in Greek territory. Name: Children of Hera, Heracles and Heracles, Lily. Age: 15. Rarity: star 5. Class: Foreigner/alter ego. Subclass: Saber, Archer, Lancer, Assassin, Rider, Berserker, PRNR. Source: Mythology. Region: Greece. Hidden attribute: Human. Alignment: Chaotic good. Parameter: Under effects of passive skills and passive type Noble Phantasm. Strength: A+. Speed: A. Endurance: A+. Luck: C. Mana: A. Noble Phantasm: A. Skills. Class skills. Riding: B. A if summoned as Rider. Magic resistance: A. Dreamer of Realms: EX. Passive skills. Divinity: A+. Active skills. Mana burst, lightning/light: A. A skill that displays their characteristics as heroes, the guiding light that illuminates the darkest of nights. In many ways similar to the subspecies magic that some saint-type servants possess, it is able to release magic in the form of strength-increasing light and almighty thunder. Mind's eye true/fake: A. A heightened capacity for observation, refined through training, discipline, and experience, both a result of talent and an overwhelming amount of combat experience. A weapon wielded by none other than a mortal gained through tenacious training. So long there is even a 1% chance of a comeback, this ability greatly improves the chances of winning. Blessings of Olympus, B+. Blessings of the gods of Olympus and their kind. While plain it may seem at first glance, when put together, it creates a myriad of interactions, unlike none other. Clairvoyance, Artemis and Apollo, B. Being a skill furnished on the flesh, this ability allows superior visual perception and dynamic occipital capture, and when in interaction with the mind's eye skill, limited future sight is also available, as well as seeing invisible targets. By extreme concentration, they may manipulate their own sense of time. Appreciation of weapons, Ares and Hephaestus, C. Superior comprehension related to all kinds of weaponry. With just one glance, they can grasp how to confront and utilize ordinary weapons that aren't noble phantasms. Can also master noble phantasms to a certain degree with enough practice. Rank down. Alluring aura, Aphrodite, D. A mesmerizing kind of skill possessed by those with a natural constitution of having a beautiful attitude. It is also a declaration of the power exercised by royalty. Self-regeneration, Demeter, C. Regeneration of not only the flesh, but also the mind. Greatly enhances the wielder's chance of survival, such as in situations like a prolonged battle. Needs food. Food. Inspiration favors the bold, Athena, C. Grants a higher chance of receiving inspiration when in dire situations. Fortune isn't the only thing that favors the bold. Madness enhancement, wine, Dionysus, C. When drinking wine, it raises basic parameters and strengthens one's physical abilities in exchange for hindering mental/regenerative capacities. Mutual understanding through language is possible when inebriated. Basically, you can talk with dolphins if you are wasted enough. Foe. Legion of Beasts, Hera. The Queen of Olympus was said to have the authority to command an entire legion of divine beasts. This is but a fragment of her scent and blood granted on her beloved, but this is more than enough as an authority against the instinct-based beasts. Can subdue/tame defeated beasts. Includes wyverns. True dragons and ancient dragons are an exception. Feet of the messenger, Hermes, D. Enhancement of agility. When running, it grants the wielder a faster trip. Godspeed, my friend. Godspeed. Salt of Oceanus, Poseidon, C. Salt that was said to have been crystallized from the bloodstream of Oceanus himself. Purifies all taint, including all arcane substances which include malicious effects. Get salty. Poison nullification, Hades, A. Complete nullification of poison, including noble phantasms of B rank and below. Hades is just the best uncle ever. Embers of Olympus, Hestia, A. Courage, valor, honor, loyalty, and above all, protection of the family. Grants the ability to control arcane flames. The effect differs on the wielder's virtue. Noble phantasm. Oh, twin heroes of Hera. Anti-human/divine. Rank, A. Their infallible bond as the twins of fate. All parameter enhancement, except NP, by 1 level. Passive. Oh, my other half. How can thee leaveth me first? Chapter 14. Teen girls assert dominance over boys. Author note. I swear to God that the title isn't a ripoff from illegal porn. Edited Chap 4 and Chap 6 again to make it less of an info dump. I'm impressed at my own insistence to continuously edit stuff. Wow. Oh, and I may or may not have amped up Chiron Bootcamp's difficulty to lunatic mode. Anyways, here we go. Chapter 14. Teen girls assert dominance over little boys. Oh, exalted Atlanta, elder sister blessed by the blue pale moon, please have mercy on me. UMU, I shall forgive you for this transgression, just this once. What the F***ck am I seeing right now? My migraine was kicking in at full force when I saw this very confusing scene unfold in front of my eyes. First thing in the morning. The green brat, Achilles, was kneeling on the ground with his forehead pressed to the ground in the common groveling position, while Atlanta had one foot on a big rock, while the other was planted firmly on the ground with her arms crossed and her chin raised high. Not gonna lie, this was generating some very disturbing energy. Like something no underage kid should lay their eyes upon. Ever. Heracles let out a soft sigh and clapped her hands together, generating a crisp sound that ripped through this charade. Atlanta, stop. That's enough. You've already asserted enough alpha dominance on that beta male. Balance is always the key. Whip and carrot. Atlanta respectfully nodded at my sister with an enlightened expression, clasping her hands in front of her chest as if she had just solved the Gordian knot. Scathach, who was perched on a tree branch nearby, nodded her head most vigorously in agreement. It was disturbingly similar to a cult leader and her followers. Poor Achilles lifted his head with a bewildered expression. Alpha dom, beta male dash. I inwardly cringed as I realized, again, how much influence I had on my sister. Now philosophers are going to write about how ancient Greece is the bedrock of democracy and weird fetish categorizations. Under Heracles' name. Wait, shit. Heracles has already corrupted Atlanta, hasn't she? Damn my stupid mouth to hell. Unaware of my inner regret, Heracles continued on with a proud nod. And you, Achilles. You now know that even though you are superior in speed compared to almost every man and woman on Greek soil, there are always ones that are faster. Achilles drooped his head and angrily bit his lip at her words. However, he did not refute nor make up an excuse. Heracles smiled. She opened her mouth to say some inspiring words I taught her before, when, heh, loser. Jason aka Prince with an inferiority complex snickered. Not. Looking so hot now are you, Achilles? Heracles turned around. Slowly. She had a tight smile on her lovely face. The shut up now or you will for eternity smile. Sadly, Jason wasn't the absolute sharpest when it came to self-preservation instincts. He puffed out his chest like a cock in heat and quirked up the corner of his lips in the cockiest way possible. You should have taken my advice when I said there are always people faster than you, mortal or immortal. Well, while I have to give him credit for spouting some advice that was wiser beyond his years, his maturity surely wasn't the case. Jason tried to follow up with some witty remark when he, at last, noticed that a certain violent guardian angel of mine that was going to murder him so hard, his consciousness would likely end up in the 9th dimension of hell. I was of course talking about my beloved darling sister. And she was mad. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you, ow, wow, whoa? Oh, that iron grip on his head got a hurt. Jason squirmed and jerked in the air like a fish hooked up by the line as Achilles looked at the rather pitiful sight with equal amounts of vindictive glee and awe. I really am second-guessing Chiron's win-win teaching strategies, because if this looked like good education, I'm not trusting any kids below 13 to Chiron. Like, ever. Rolling my eyes, I decided to complete my good cop routine as I put a hand on Heracles' shoulder. Immediately, she loosened her grip. We winked at each other. Clearing my throat, I knelt down beside Jason, who was still clutching his head in agony and rolling all over the ground like some toddler-regressed kid. Ahem. Jason, I know that my sister was a little harsh, but we do not insult each other here. We are here to learn from each other and from our mistakes, and to reflect on our own flaws and weaknesses, not to disparage or denigrate our classmates. In other words, bad-mouthing is a no-no. Are we clear? Jason groaned. He muttered something that suspiciously sounded like, you talk like an old geezer, but Heracles' knuckle-cracking shut him up rather quickly. It seemed that for Jason, the make your body have a Pavlovian reaction to pain method was the most effective. Why do these Greeks always choose pain conditioning instead of words and reason? Well, his loss. I shrugged and stood up, meeting the respectful gaze of Achilles with a rigid smile. Why does Atlanta look so proud? That's my alpha male brother Heracles. Make sure to pay your respects, beta male Achilles, she stated triumphantly. Wait, what the fuck did she just say? What is a beta dash? Achilles? Ma'am, yes ma'am. Beta male Achilles pays his respect to alpha male brother Heracles, ma'am. Scathach folded her arms before her chest and smirked with a mother-knows-best kind of patronizing smirk. Sister Atlanta, you've grown indeed, she whispered in a hushed tone. She then proceeded to wipe a genuine tear from her eye. My migraine was now enthusiastically performing an all-out break dance inside a mosh pit with a lethal dose of meth and steroids, while 100 little fragments of my sanity were having an outdoor sex party above its roof. To put it simply, I wanted to curl up into a ball and die. Closing my eyes, I cursed my stupid esoterical knowledge for the 100th time. It was going to be a long stay, and I absolutely, without a doubt, resent my very existence. The next day, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, life gave me the middle finger. Aark. Abderius. Theisius. Is that how you repay me for treating your wounds? Yes, Asclepius. Use that anger and channel it into power. Burn it into perseverance, so that you can one day make those bastards who left you behind suffer in your place. As you have suffered before them, make them shiver before your growth. Your potential. Aark. Before you say anything, no, this isn't a new nefarious form of brainwashing committed by a heinous, demonic cult. It was Scathach and one of her new pupils, Asclepius. Yes, the always calm, chill, if not a little medical crazy son of Apollo. What was Scathach doing, you ask? She was making Asclepius climb up a fucking 100-foot-tall, 30 tree with his bare hands, with a blunted spear positioned right beneath his asshole in case he fell. Abderus, being the wise son of Hermes, ran away with Theseus, leaving their physically weak and depleted comrade behind as a bait/sacrifice, which bought them enough time for escape. In their defense, Scathach did tell them that she would grant a free day to whoever managed to evade her clutches for 3 hours. And by the end of the 3-hour survival, they looked like a pair of milk-soaked rags someone had casually tossed into the bin. Did that make Asclepius forgive his teammates? How dare you? Baste Aarts. Yeah, that was the answer. I pity him, I truly do. However, Chiron did advise me to trust my family. Yes, Scathach and Atlanta are my sisters in all but blood. Though how can I be assured with this? Oh, he fell. Huh. The howls. Oh, the terrible howls. I close my eyes. May you rest in peace, dear boy. May you rest in one piece. I really didn't want to hear how 2 other voices joined Asclepius' screams a few weeks later. It sounded like someone was putting a grinder through an entire family of cats. Being the overseer of this entire bunch of mad girls was like a visceral torture on my sanity. Chiron did help them routinely, but it did little to lessen the boys' sufferings. At least Alcides trained Jason in a Spartan, yet acceptable way. Far more appropriate than what I've seen the Greeks can do. Glancing sideways, I saw Jason doing his daily 100 sit-ups, push-ups, and squats followed by a 6.2-mile, 10 kilometers, run, with a 10 kilograms rock strapped to his back. He looked like he was halfway on his road to Uncle Hades. Heracles hovered over him with the best boot camp instructor look she could come up with. Why do I always teach her the most needless stuff imaginable from my encyclopedia of weird 21st century knowledge? Is that the best you've got? Is that the best the future king of Thessaly has got to offer? Damn. What the? Why am I still here? Just to suffer. Heracles cracked her knuckles. Jason's body jerked and became ramrod straight. His limbs stopped twitching. His face morphed into that of an anime protagonist that survived the nuclear apocalypse. Oi, Jason. Are you ready? Aye, ma'am. I can't hear you. Aye, ma'am. Uhu. Who lives in a palace under the sea? Poseidon Great Lance. Exorbitant and blue and furious is he. Poseidon Great Lance. If nautical violence is something you wish. Poseidon Great Lance. Then drop on his platter and flop like his fish. Poseidon Great Lance. Ready? Poseidon Great Lance. Poseidon Great Lance. Poseidon Great Lance. Poseidon Great Lance. P.O. Great Lance. Yeah, totally acceptable. This is gonna be the world's oldest theme song for a Greek myth. Just you wait. Fuck my life. I'm so fucking sorry. Just when I was ready to fall into the depths of self-hatred and despair, a soft, white, and utterly adorable beast licked my cheek. My dear weasel. My Galanthus. Galanthus? What are you doing here, girl? Where have you been? Foe. Q-foe. My life is whole. Author note. AAO1 rap. I unashamedly admit that I had a blast writing this chapter. This is what happens when you have a character with echoes of modern knowledge. What SquarePants? What beast? I don't know what you're talking about. Please consider reviewing and commenting. Anything would be a great help. Ideas are also welcome. X-kalibuuuur, dreaming of an angry yellow sponge. Chapter 15, Eye of the Trainees. Author note. A complimentary behind-the-scenes chapter, aka Victim Assembly. A chapter from the students' perspectives. Chapter 15, Eye of the Trainees, Victims. The madness that started in Camp Chiron could only be explained with one word: Heracles' teachings. Heracles had taught his family a lot of things ranging from insane military training methods and boot camp instructor speeches to famous cartoon/anime songs. Of course, his family didn't know that it originated from the 21st century. They just assumed he was well-read and the customs were from foreign countries far away. They couldn't have been more wrong. Heracles taught them the mechanics of pack behavior, one seen in social animals with a hierarchy, such as wolves. Alpha, beta, the cycle of reward and punishment, and pack mentality. Heracles sang children's songs to Atlanta and Scathach on the rare occasions they were unable to sleep, plagued by past horrors and scarred by traumatic nightmares. Heracles sometimes held speeches he'd heard from famous politicians and rulers from various ages, making fun of their true motives and dissecting their narrative skills, and explaining how mere words could sometimes control people far more effectively than physical threats. He taught them a lot of new things, and for them, the innovative knowledge was more than enough to leave a huge impact on their minds. Indoctrinated by his antics, the poor girls involuntarily became what 21st century people might call natural trolls. Tragically, the girls couldn't tell his jokes apart from his more serious topics. In Heracles' defense, it was a friggin' meme. Who could have guessed the first meme hazard in human history started in ancient Greece? Maybe Elya was right about deleting his existence after all. If only he knew that this would be the beginning of the cult of Heracles, he might have made Elya's job a lot easier. BGM insert. Survivor. Eye of the Tiger. Achilles. It all started when Achilles challenged Atlanta to a race. Achilles, being a demigod gifted with invulnerability and godspeed that rivaled Hermes himself, believed that there was no other person faster than him. Of course, he knew that he was still a child, and that there are a few adult heroes that have greater agility, but he firmly believed that he was the fastest in the same age group, including people that were a few years older than him. That led him to falsely conclude that he could teach Atlanta a lesson and show the new arrivals that he is the boss, an arrogance that he shall pay for most dearly. Only the harshest punishments await the loser of Atlanta's foot race, a 100 kilometers non-stop marathon with an arrow-shooting hunter after his tender ass. Achilles never knew racing could be so torturous. Asclepius and Theseus and Abderus, all three of them had an acute sense of self-preservation. That was why when Scathach announced that all they needed to do was escape, they were overjoyed, but not for long. How can one girl catch us all? They thought. What is the worst she can do to us? They thought. On the first day, they all ended up in her clutches, bruised, battered, and with their pride and dignity blown into smithereens. She was a witch in the truest sense. They couldn't outrun her. They couldn't overpower her. Nothing they did mattered. Their resistance was laughable in front of the sheer martial might she displayed. One by one, they were hunted. One by one, they were taken. Into the shadows of the forest. Into the dark. Into their doom. Scathach pointed her spears at them, forcing them to overcome the impossible. Climb a towering tree covered with freaking olive oil, with weights as heavy as their own weight, and a damn anal penetration rod beneath their asses. It was then that they unanimously agreed she was an accursed witch. Survival of the fittest. That day, two of them decided to make a sacrifice. That day, one of their brethren was left behind as bait. And that day, they created a monster of their own making. Ha ha. I shall not let go of your damn heels. Abderus. Theseus. Today, you shall suffer as I have. Today, we shall become a true family. In suffering, in pain. Togethiaia. No, they may or may not have committed genocide on Asclepius' brain cells. Jason was cocky. Even he had to admit it. He had no choice but to admit it when a literal ton of steel rock was crushing his back. Heracles thought it was a mere 10 kilograms rock. Wrong. It was a freaking weight enchanted by some unholy magic. When they first started his training, Jason wasn't very obedient. He even made fun of his new mentor, Heracles. In return, Heracles made sure what was actually funny. Her iron grip on his delicate skull. Try slacking off. Iron grip. Try talking back. Iron grip. Try running away. Iron grip. Too tired? Iron grip. On the verge of a mental breakdown? Iron grip. And so it is. Hi-ya. More muscle. Hi-ya. Jason was reborn. Like an immortal phoenix soaring up from the undying flames. He was no longer the weak-willed boy who searched for excuses. He was no longer the coward who hid behind others in times of conflict. He was molded into a true leader. A true commander that was fit to lead from the front lines. He was Jason. Brother Heracles. I humbly greet thee, excellence. Heracles? What did you do to him, and why do I sense guilt from you? What do you mean you made a trigger? You made your knuckle cracking into a Pavlovian trigger for his second personality. Omake. Chaldea summons the gang and boss themes that goes with them when summoned. Disclaimer. I shall not be responsible for any raptured eardrums or overdoses of sheer epicness. Search at YouTube, copy-paste the names. Ritsuka. Why do I hear boss music? Godspeed Duo, Achilles and Atlanta Kakyoin's theme, but its epic version, Attack on Titan style. Fastest duo alive. Which is faster? Don't ask if you want the timeline to stay intact. Demigod Trio, Asclepius and Theseus and Abderus Pillar Men theme, but its epic version, Awaken. They pose in the most bizarre way humanly possible as their silhouettes slowly appear in the hazy smoke. You know they own you. Zeus Twins, Castor and Pollux Game of Thrones. Main theme, epic metal cover by Scar Productions. A tornado of lighting creates a cocoon, from which they emerge with a blinding flash. They embrace each other in the classic ballet hold. Heras Twins, Heracles and Heracles Giorno's theme, but its epic version. An explosion of gold flames rises from the horizon as they shimmer into existence. Heracles is perched on Heracles' shoulder with a cocky grin. Jason the jacked. Hi. Jason has a very different haircut with different vibes. He raises his big fat sword that pierces the very skies. And he's freaking jacked. Argonauts Assembly, Jason's noble phantasm warriors of the world united. We'll make the Argonauts walk in slow motion. Menacingly. Special guest. Altera the bunny titan, Sepharver, Cars theme, but its epic ultimate version, Avalon. You are footed. I think Jason might be the most OP out of them. Is he the true MC? Anyways, as always, please review if you are eager for more. Or review it anyways. X-kalibuuuur out.